Portgas D Ace was supposed to die at Marineford. The world government built an entire war around that conclusion. Whitebeard crossed the sea to prevent it. Thousands of pirates and marines bled beneath the execution platform to decide whether one young man was allowed to keep living. And for a few seconds, it seemed that the pirates had won. Ace was free. His handcuffs were broken. The road to the bay was open. All he had to do was run. Then Admiral Akinu insulted Whitebeard. Ace stopped, and the future of the world changed. What if, for once, the man who could never walk away from an insult understood that leaving was not cowardice? What if he heard Whitebeard's final order, looked at the family risking everything behind him, and decided that the bravest thing he could do was survive? At first, this seems like a simple, happy ending. Ace and Luffy escape together. The brothers are reunited. Luffy avoids the greatest trauma of his life, and Ace gets a second chance. But Marineford was never only about whether Ace lived or died. It was the point where the old age of piracy collapsed. Whitebeard died. Blackbeard stole his power. The Marines proved that they could bring the son of the Pirate King to the scaffold. And the whole world watched a war that made the One Piece feel real again. Ace surviving would not stop that age from changing. It would change who carried Whitebeard's will into the new one. And it would create a problem that the world government might fear even more than Luffy. In the real story, Gall D. Rogers' bloodline ends publicly at Marineford. The government turns Ace into an example. They tell the world that the cursed child was captured, condemned, and erased. If Ace escapes, that message becomes its opposite. The greatest military force on the planet gathers its admirals, its warlords, its elite officers, and 100,000 soldiers to execute Roger's son in front of the world. Then Roger's son escapes anyway. Ace would not merely be alive. He would become proof that the government could fail. But before he could become a symbol, Ace would have to survive the next few minutes. The most believable version of this alternate history begins with the smallest possible change. Akinu calls Whitebeard a failure. In the original story, Ace turns around because the insult strikes the deepest wound in him. Whitebeard gave Ace the family and belonging he had spent his whole life believing he did not deserve. So when Akinu attacks Whitebeard's name, Ace treats retreat like betrayal. This time, Ace still stops for half a second. He still clenches his fist. He still wants to answer. But then he remembers what Whitebeard actually said. The old man did not order his sons to defend his pride. He ordered them to live. Ace has spent his life wondering whether his birth was a crime. Marineford gives him the answer. Hundreds of people have risked their lives because they believe his life has value. To throw that away over one insult would not defend Whitebeard. It would make Whitebeard's sacrifice meaningless. So Ace keeps running. Akinu does not politely let him leave. The Admiral was never depending only on a taunt. He wants Roger's son dead, and he wants Luffy dead as well. He launches himself across the broken plaza, magma pouring from his arm as the escaping pirates close around the brothers. But now Ace is moving with Luffy rather than standing apart from him. Jinbe is nearby. Ivankov is still trying to clear a path. Crocodile, Marco, Vista, and the remaining commanders all understand that the rescue has entered its final and most dangerous stage. Akinu attacks, and Ace turns to block him but not to win. That distinction matters. Fire cannot overpower magma, and Ace already learned how dangerous Akinu's fruit is. Instead of locking fists and defending his pride, Ace throws a wall of flame across the Admiral's vision while Jinbe pulls Luffy away. Marco crashes down between them in a burst of blue fire. Vista's blades force Akinu to guard for an instant. Crocodile tears apart the ground beneath the Admiral and scatters the brothers toward the bay. None of these fighters can defeat Akinu. Together, they can steal seconds. Ace and Luffy reach the ice at the edge of the battlefield. Luffy's body finally gives out. The hormones, poison, exhaustion, and repeated injuries have carried him far beyond what he should be able to survive. In the original story, he collapses after Ace is struck. Here, he collapses while Ace is still beside him. Ace catches him. This image becomes one of the defining pictures of the new era. The son of Roger carrying the unconscious grandson of Garp away from the greatest battle in the world, while Whitebeard stands behind them and holds back the Marines alone. Ace wants to turn back. Of course he does. Every instinct tells him to fight beside his captain. He can feel Whitebeard's presence behind him. He can hear the old man's voice. He knows that this is the last time he will ever see his father alive. But Whitebeard's order is still the same. Leave. This is the first great cost of Ace's survival. He does not get to save Whitebeard. He has to obey him. Jinbe takes Luffy when Ace begins to slow. The Heart Pirate's submarine rises in the bay, and Trafalgar Law orders them aboard. Law has come to rescue Luffy for reasons even he may not completely understand. Adding Ace makes the escape harder, but it also makes refusing him almost impossible. Leaving Roger's son in the water would invite every remaining Whitebeard pirate to attack the submarine, and Law is far too practical for that kind of inconvenience. Ace is injured, exhausted, and still partly burned from clashing with Akinu, but he is conscious as the submarine dives. That means he sees the battlefield disappear through the narrowing water. He hears the shock of Whitebeard's power above them. He feels the sea convulse when Blackbeard's crew attacks. And when Whitebeard dies standing, Ace is not there to hear his final declaration with his own ears. He learns about it from the crew. Whitebeard tells the world that the One Piece is real. Blackbeard covers his body, steals the power of the Tremor fruit, and emerges as the first known man to wield 2 devil fruits. Sengoku attacks him. The war threatens to continue even after its stated purpose has failed. Then Shanks arrives and ends it. Almost all of this still happens because Ace's survival does not remove the forces already gathered at Marineford. Whitebeard came prepared to die. Blackbeard came prepared to steal his fruit. Shanks came because the balance of the world was breaking. The difference is that the Marines cannot announce a clean victory. They killed Whitebeard, but Whitebeard's objective succeeded. Ace escaped. That creates an immediate crisis inside Marine headquarters. Sengoku knows the war cannot simply continue until every pirate is dead. Too many soldiers have fallen. Blackbeard has acquired an impossible power and Shanks is standing in the plaza. But Akinu sees the escape as an intolerable stain. The son of Dragon and the son of Roger have both slipped through the Marine's hands. To him, mercy at this point is not peace. It is permission for evil to grow. Shanks still forces the battlefield to stop, but his intervention looks even more humiliating for the government. He is not ending an execution after the condemned man dies. He is protecting the retreat of the man they failed to kill. The official newspapers try to control the story. They report Whitebeard's death in enormous letters. They celebrate the courage of the Marines. They emphasize that the pirate age has lost its strongest man, but they cannot hide Ace. Too many people watched the broadcast before it was cut. Too many photographs show his broken handcuffs. Too many survivors know that he left Marineford alive. Within days, 3 stories spread across the seas. Whitebeard is dead. Blackbeard has stolen his power. And Fire Fist Ace survived his own execution. For ordinary people, Ace's escape is terrifying. The government revealed that he was Roger's son specifically to make the public fear him. They described his blood as a threat that had to be removed. If that threat is now free, frightened kingdoms demand protection. Marine recruitment may actually rise. Akinu's belief in absolute justice gains supporters who think Sengoku failed by allowing Shanks to halt the war. For pirates, the meaning is completely different. Ace becomes the man a whole era could not kill. Whitebeard's final words reignite the hunt for the One Piece, while Ace's escape makes the new age feel open to anyone reckless enough to challenge the world. And for Luffy, none of that matters yet. Inside Law's submarine, Luffy drifts between life and death. Ace sits outside the operating room with blood dried across his skin, unable to do anything. This is a strange reversal. Ace has always imagined himself dying for Luffy. It is almost easy for him to picture. Dying would settle the question that has haunted him since childhood. If Ace gives his life to save someone he loves, then perhaps his existence can finally be justified. But Luffy does not need Ace to die for him now. He needs Ace to wait. He needs Ace to trust a doctor. He needs Ace to remain alive when the guilt arrives. Law saves Luffy, though the damage is severe. Jinbe explains that the submarine cannot stay near Marineford. Boa Hancock offers Amazon Lily as a place where the Marines will have difficulty following. In the original story, Ace is already dead and Luffy's mind breaks when he wakes. Here, Ace is sitting beside him. Luffy opens his eyes and asks about Whitebeard. Ace cannot lie. The old man is dead. Many of his sons are dead. They died opening the path that Ace used to escape. Luffy is devastated, but his grief is different. He cared about Whitebeard, and he saw the crew sacrifice themselves, yet the person at the center of his world is still there. When panic rises and Luffy reaches for the brother he thinks he may have lost, Ace can answer. This means Luffy does not suffer the same complete collapse he experiences in canon. He does not wake believing that his last surviving brother has been torn out of the world. Jin does not need to force him to count the friends he still has in quite the same way. But it would be a mistake to say that Luffy simply feels fine. Marineford has destroyed his belief that determination is always enough. He infiltrated Impel Down, survived poison, crossed a battlefield, released Conqueror's Haki, and reached the execution platform. Even after all that, he could not protect himself. He had to be carried by Ivankov, Jin, Whitebeard's commanders, Law, Shanks, and Ace. If any one of them had failed, Luffy would be dead. Ace's survival does not erase Luffy's helplessness. In some ways, it makes that helplessness harder to ignore, because Luffy is awake later to see what survival cost everyone else. Ace has his own collapse, only quieter. He receives a list of the Whitebeard pirates who never made it out. He asks about Oars Jr. He asks about the captains who shielded him. He asks how Whitebeard died, and then asks again, as if a different description might reveal a way the old man could have lived. No one blames him. That makes it worse. Ace expected anger. He expected at least one survivor to look at him and say that the price was too high. Instead, Marco sends a message saying that their father chose his death, and that Ace must not insult that choice by throwing away the life they saved. It is exactly the lesson Ace understood when he walked away from Akinu. Understanding it once does not mean he can live with it. On Amazon Lily, the two brothers recover beside each other. Their conversations would not be gentle. Luffy would probably begin by yelling at Ace for getting captured. Ace would yell back that Luffy had no business entering a war between monsters. Luffy would point out that he rescued him. Ace would point out that Luffy nearly died. Both would be correct, and neither would be emotionally equipped to say what he actually means. Eventually, the anger gives way to honesty. Ace admits that he nearly turned around. He tells Luffy about Akinu's insult and the rage that almost pulled him back. He admits that some part of him still believes he should have died with Whitebeard. Luffy's answer is simple. Whitebeard told Ace to live, so Ace should live. For Luffy, this is obvious. A promise does not become less important because keeping it hurts. That answer becomes the center of Ace's alternate story. In canon, Ace's final moments resolve his lifelong fear by showing him that he was loved. If he survives, he still learns that lesson, but he has to do something much more difficult with it. He has to build a life after receiving the answer. Rayleigh soon arrives at Amazon Lily. He has read the battlefield correctly. Luffy cannot return to Sabayati after only a few days, and the Straw Hats cannot survive the new world at their current strength. Rayleigh proposes the same plan. Luffy should send a hidden message telling his crew to wait 2 years while they train. Ace initially hates the idea. Luffy has already been separated from his crew for too long. Ace knows what it means to lose a family, and asking Luffy to remain apart from his own sounds cruel. But Rayleigh makes him confront the reality of Marineford. Luffy's crew will follow him anywhere. If they reunite now, they will follow him into dangers they are not ready to face. Ace cannot argue with that, because Whitebeard's sons followed him into exactly such a danger. The return to Marineford still happens, but the image is different. In canon, Luffy returns with Jinbe and Rayleigh, circles the bay, rings the ox bell, and silently sends the message of 3 days becoming 2 years. In this timeline, Ace cannot openly join them. His face is the most wanted face in the world, and a second attempt to parade him through Marine headquarters would turn a coded message into another war. So Ace watches from a distance while Luffy rings the bell. For once, he allows his little brother to act without placing himself in front of him. The papers carry Luffy's photograph. The Straw Hats understand. Around the world, they begin 2 years of training. Then Ace has to decide what to do with his own second chance. He could stay with Luffy. Part of him wants to. If he remains on the island or near Rayleigh's training ground, he can protect his brother from almost anything. But that would repeat the mistake Ace and Luffy have both made. Protection is not the same as trust. Luffy needs to become strong enough to lead his crew, and Ace needs to face the family that lost its father rescuing him. So the brothers separate again. This goodbye is smaller than Marineford and more important. Ace promises that they will meet in the new world. Luffy tells him not to get captured again. Ace laughs, but neither treats the promise casually. Ace leaves Amazon Lily and travels toward the place where Whitebeard's remaining commanders are gathering. He expects a funeral. What he finds is the beginning of a succession crisis. Whitebeard never wanted a kingdom in the ordinary sense. He claimed islands because his flag protected people. He collected sons rather than subjects. That made his empire deeply personal. When he dies, there is no simple crown for Marco to inherit. There are crews, allies, towns, trade routes, and vulnerable islands that survived because enemies were afraid of Whitebeard. Now they are not afraid. Pirates begin attacking Whitebeard's territories almost immediately. Some are opportunists. Some work for other emperors. Some want revenge for old defeats. Weevil and his mother will eventually hunt Whitebeard's former allies. And above all of them is Blackbeard, who knows the old man's territory better than almost anyone because he spent decades aboard the same ship. Ace arrives expecting to apologize. Marco does not let him. The surviving commanders hold a funeral for Whitebeard and for everyone lost at Marineford. Ace kneels before his captain's grave with the hat that once belonged to him pressed against the earth. He tries to say that he is sorry. Marco interrupts and tells him that if he wants to honor their father, there is work to do. This does not absolve Ace. It gives his guilt a direction. For the first time, Ace is faced with the question of whether he should lead. He is Whitebeard's 2nd Division commander. He is Roger's son. He is the person the crew went to war to save. Many younger pirates would follow him without hesitation. News outlets already call him Whitebeard's heir, partly because it creates a dramatic headline, and partly because the world government would rather define Ace by dangerous bloodlines than by his own choices. But Marco is more experienced. He understands the territories, the allied captains, and the balance between the emperors. Ace also knows that his last independent campaign ended with him chasing Blackbeard against Whitebeard's warning and being delivered to Impel Down. If Ace immediately declares himself the new captain, he has learned nothing. So he refuses the title. Marco becomes the central coordinator of the remnants, while Ace takes on a role that suits him better. He travels. He warns islands that Whitebeard's protection has not vanished. He reconnects scattered allies. He carries messages between captains. And wherever raiders test the old flag, Fire Fist Ace appears to remind them that the family is wounded, not dead. This is how Ace begins to become stronger during the 2-year time skip. Not by sitting on one island and practicing punches, but by being forced to survive the political world Whitebeard once handled for him. Ace has always been powerful. He fought Jin for days before joining Whitebeard. He rose quickly to division commander. He possessed Conqueror's haki as a child, even if he never mastered it in the way the greatest pirates do. But power was never his only problem. Ace rushed ahead. He mistook taking every burden upon himself for responsibility. He believed that if he was willing to die, he was entitled to decide the risk for everyone around him. Marineford teaches him that leadership is not about being the first person to sacrifice himself. Sometimes leadership means staying alive long enough to carry everyone else's sacrifices. Marco helps Ace refine his armament and observation haki. Vista teaches him patience in combat. The Allied captains teach him that protecting territory requires negotiation as often as fire. Ace's devil fruit remains spectacular, but his greatest improvement is learning when not to use it. And still, beneath all of that growth, Blackbeard waits. Teach is the reason Ace was captured. He murdered Thatch, stole the dark fruit, defeated Ace, and handed him to the government. Then he used the war built around Ace to enter Impel Down, recruit some of the world's worst criminals, kill Whitebeard, and steal the old man's power. Every part of Ace wants revenge. The difference is that now he is surrounded by people who know exactly what that revenge could cost. For several months, revenge and responsibility pull Ace in opposite directions. Each report about Blackbeard feels personal. Teach takes former Whitebeard islands, seizes weapons, recruits pirates, and learns to control the tremor power he stole. He is not merely expanding. He is dismantling the world Ace's father built and using Whitebeard's own strength to do it. Marco tries to keep the remnants organized, but the pressure grows. If they never answer Teach, more allies will decide that Whitebeard's family is finished. If they attack too soon, they may give Blackbeard the final battle he wants. In the original timeline, the Whitebeard remnants eventually fight Blackbeard in the Payback War and suffer an overwhelming defeat. Ace being alive makes that war larger, more emotional, and probably more dangerous. it does not automatically make the Whitebeard side win. Teach has always been a terrible opponent for Ace. The dark fruit can pull Ace's body toward him and cancel the power of the flame fruit on contact. Now Teach also has Whitebeard's earthquakes. The abilities that once belonged to Ace's enemy and his father exist in the same hands. Fighting Blackbeard would feel like attacking the man who ruined Ace's life, while being struck by a stolen piece of the man who saved it. Ace's presence does improve the Remnant's chances. He knows how Teach fights. He has faced the darkness directly. His flames can control a battlefield, separate Blackbeard's captains, and protect weaker allies. After more training, he is harder to drag into the simple close-range exchange that defeated him on Banaro Island. But Blackbeard's real advantage is not just strength. He chooses the conditions. Teach is cautious whenever the result is uncertain and reckless only when he can turn chaos in his favor. He spent years hiding his ambition aboard Whitebeard's ship. He knows Marco, Jazu, Vista, Ace, and the habits of the allied captains. Meanwhile, the new members of Blackbeard's crew are unpredictable even to people who knew Teach well. So the payback war still happens, perhaps a little later than in canon because Ace argues that they must first secure the islands most likely to be attacked. That delay is evidence of his growth. The old Ace would have sailed the moment he learned Teach's location. The new Ace prepares supply lines, gathers allies, and agrees on an escape route. Then the battle begins, and preparation is not enough. Blackbeard's darkness tears flames out of the sky. Tremors break the ground beneath the commanders. The former prisoners of Impel Down turn every isolated duel into an execution. Shiryu attacks from angles the Whitebeard pirates cannot predict. Van Augur removes targets at impossible distances. The island itself becomes unstable as Teach laughs with Whitebeard's power in his fist. Ace reaches him anyway. Their rematch is one of the most important moments of this timeline because it tests whether Ace truly changed at Marineford. Teach taunts him with everything that should make him lose control. He says Whitebeard died for nothing. He says the old man was too weak to use the power properly. He says Ace survived only because other men were stupid enough to die in his place. And the worst part is that these are not random insults. They are versions of the thoughts Ace already carries. Ace attacks with enormous force, but he does not abandon the plan. When Teach draws him in, Ace coats his body with haki rather than trusting only his Logia form. When earthquakes split the battlefield, he uses flame to signal the allied captains toward the ships. He fights to create an opening, not to prove that he can defeat Teach alone. For a while it works. Then Teach's crew begins to overwhelm Marco's line. Several allied captains fall. One of the evacuation ships is destroyed. Ace sees a path to Teach and realizes that following it would leave the wounded exposed. This is the same choice Marineford gave him in another form. Pride points forward, family points back. Ace retreats. The Whitebeard pirates lose the payback war, but they are not annihilated. Ace and Marco keep enough of the fleet together to rescue many of the wounded. Teach claims the victory and rises as one of the 4 emperors. The remnants scatter, just as they do in canon, because they no longer have the power to hold Whitebeard's empire as a single organization. Ace survives again. This survival feels nothing like Marineford. There is no crowd cheering for him, no brother in his arms, and no father ordering him to leave. Ace gives the order himself. Some pirates will call it cowardice. Blackbeard certainly will, but the people Ace brings home know the truth. If Ace had chased revenge, they would be dead. That is the first time Ace behaves not as Whitebeard's reckless son, but as one of the people capable of carrying Whitebeard's will. The loss changes his purpose during the rest of the time skip. He can no longer pretend that defeating Teach is one battle away. Blackbeard is an emperor. His crew is growing. The world is moving faster than the remnants can control. Marco withdraws to Whitebeard's home village, where he protects the people the old man secretly supported. Other commanders disappear into separate lives. Ace continues sailing, but he stops trying to preserve Whitebeard's entire territory. That task is impossible. Instead, he chooses the places where his presence can actually matter. Some islands raise new flags. Some make deals with other emperors. A few remain under the symbol of a flame added beside Whitebeard's old mark. Ace does not declare himself an emperor, and the world does not treat him as one yet. He has no stable grand fleet and no desire to rule, but he becomes one of the new world's most difficult independent pirates to predict. The government raises his bounty dramatically. They cannot allow the public to think of him as a harmless survivor. He is described as Roger's heir, Whitebeard's avenger, and a potential claimant to the One Piece. Most of that is propaganda. It is also exactly the kind of propaganda that attracts desperate young pirates to his name. Ace refuses many of them. This may sound strange, because Whitebeard accepted unwanted people and made them family. But Ace now understands the cost of gathering followers around a symbol. He will not accept people simply because they want to die for Roger's son. He asks what they want from the sea. He asks whether they would still follow him if he never hunts the One Piece. He asks whether they can protect one another when he is not present. Gradually, a smaller crew forms around him. Some are survivors of the Spade Pirates, depending on where they were during the Whitebeard years. Some are former Whitebeard pirates who prefer to remain active. Others come from islands Ace defended after the war. They are not the new Whitebeard pirates. Ace knows that name belongs to a family and an era that cannot simply be rebuilt. They become the Fire Fist pirates again, but not the crew Ace led as a teenager. The new flag carries a small white crescent behind the familiar flames. It is not a claim to Whitebeard's throne. It is a promise not to forget him. While Ace is learning to live with a legacy, Luffy is learning to lead without him. Rayleigh trains Luffy on Rusukana. The 2-year time skip still makes sense because Marineford proved the same essential point. Luffy is not ready for the new world. The absence of Ace's death might change the emotional tone of the training, but it does not change the animals that can kill him, the Haki he does not understand, or the enemies waiting ahead. Luffy has one advantage in this timeline. His grief is not consuming him. He can focus sooner. He occasionally receives carefully rooted newspapers or messages indicating that Ace is alive. Rayleigh does not let those messages become a distraction. If Luffy wants to meet Ace as an equal on the sea, he has to finish his own work. But Luffy also loses one source of urgency. In canon, Ace's death is the wound that makes Luffy feel the absolute cost of weakness. Here, he knows that Ace survived. Could that make him less determined? Probably not by much. Luffy watched people die for him. He saw Whitebeard fall. He felt his own body fail when his crew needed him to return. His goal has never depended on revenge. Once he accepts that 2 years of training will protect his friends, Luffy gives himself to it completely. The deeper difference appears in the way he talks about danger. Canon Luffy becomes slightly more willing after the time skip to recognize when retreat is necessary, though he remains Luffy and will still pick a fight with an emperor over food. In this timeline, Ace's choice at Marineford becomes a living example. Luffy knows that his brother escaped because he did not answer every insult. This does not make Luffy cautious. Nothing short of a different personality could do that. But when Rayleigh teaches that survival can be part of victory, Luffy has proof. 2 years pass. The Straw Hats return to Sabayati. Pacifistas that once terrified them are destroyed in moments. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji demonstrate the strength they gained. The crew descends toward Fishman Island, while news of their return spreads through the sea. Ace hears about it before Luffy can contact him. His first reaction is relief. His second is annoyance that Luffy has already attacked government weapons within minutes of reappearing. His third is pride. He does not race to Fishman Island. That would undermine the promise both brothers made. They are pirates on separate journeys. Ace will help if Luffy truly needs him, but he will not follow the Sunny like an anxious parent. Most of Fishman Island, therefore, unfolds in a familiar way. Hody Jones still exploits old hatred. Shirahoshi still carries the burden of Poseidon. Luffy still fights to protect the island and openly challenges Big Mom by claiming it as his territory. Ace's survival adds a quiet political complication. Fishman Island had been protected by Whitebeard before his death. In canon, Big Mom's flag replaces his. In this timeline, some of Whitebeard's old allies may ask Ace to take responsibility for the island. Ace cannot. He lacks the fleet and resources to protect every route beneath the Red Line. More importantly, declaring ownership over an island of oppressed people would repeat the language of power without giving them real safety. When Luffy challenges Big Mom, Ace receives the news with mixed feelings. Luffy has done the most reckless possible thing, which is normal. But he has also done what Ace could not. He has placed his own name between an island and an emperor. Ace begins to understand that Luffy is not simply catching up to him. Luffy is building a different kind of power. The Punk Hazard incident changes very little at first. Caesar still conducts experiments. Law still proposes an alliance to bring down Kaido. Luffy still agrees because alliances are apparently things he understands only as friendship with extra steps. Doflamingo still controls the underworld trade in artificial devil fruits, and destroying that trade still threatens Kaido. But Dressrosa contains the first enormous consequence of Ace's survival. There is no flame fruit in Doflamingo's Colosseum. In canon, Doflamingo uses Ace's fruit as bait. He knows Luffy will not allow someone else to take the power his brother carried. The tournament traps Luffy inside the Colosseum, draws powerful fighters into one place, gives Burgess a reason to represent Blackbeard, and eventually allows Sabo to inherit Ace's flame. If Ace is alive, Doflamingo needs a different lure. He still wants Luffy distracted. By the time the Straw Hats reach Dressrosa, Doflamingo knows that Luffy and Law are targeting him. He could offer another rare devil fruit, perhaps one stolen from his underworld network. He could announce a captured ally as the prize. He could simply manipulate the tournament so that Luffy enters while chasing information about the Smile Factory. But none of these options carry the same emotional force. Luffy is much less likely to spend precious time competing when Law's plan is already collapsing. The Dressrosa operation therefore begins more efficiently. Luffy, Zoro, Kinemon, Frankie, Robin, and Usopp divide their objectives without the Colosseum immediately swallowing Luffy. Law still attempts to hand Caesar over. Fujitora still arrives. Doflamingo still reveals that his resignation from the warlords was false, and the toys still hide the kingdom's stolen population. Without Luffy in the tournament, Rebecca's path changes. She remains one of the fighters, but the mysterious Lucy never becomes her unexpected ally. Bartolomeo enters hoping to meet Luffy and becomes increasingly furious that his idol is not there. Cavendish still pursues fame. Don Chinjao still carries his old hatred of Garp, but he has no grandson in front of him to fight. Burgess may not enter at all. Blackbeard wanted Ace's fruit because collecting powerful devil fruits is central to his crew's strategy. A lesser prize might not justify sending his champion. This removes one of the strongest fighters from the tournament and changes the later confrontation around the palace. Sabo, however, is still on Dressrosa. The Revolutionary Army did not come only for Ace's fruit. Koala and Sabo are investigating the weapons flowing from Dressrosa into wars around the world. They need proof connecting Doflamingo's underworld operation to the suffering of entire countries. That mission still exists. The difference is that Sabo has not recovered his childhood memories. In canon, the report of Ace's death shatters the wall around Sabo's forgotten past. The shock returns his memories of Ace and Luffy all at once. If Ace survives, there is no death notice to trigger that moment. Sabo may see reports from Marineford, but the world is crowded with famous pirates, and an amnesiac does not necessarily recognize why two particular names make him feel uneasy. Dragon may know Luffy is his son, yet there is no reason to tell Sabo that they once grew up together if Dragon himself does not know. So Sabo enters Dressrosa as the Revolutionary Army's chief of staff, one of its strongest officers, and a man carrying a missing piece of his own life. Then he sees Luffy. It might happen in the streets during the confusion after Sugar's power is broken. It might happen when Luffy uses Conqueror's Haki and the sound of his voice carries through the city. Or it might happen through something absurdly small. Luffy complaining about food with the exact expression he wore as a child. Memory in One Piece is often emotional before it is logical. Sabo does not need a newspaper announcing death. He needs something powerful enough to connect the adult pirate in front of him with the little brother he believed was gone. When the memories return, Sabo collapses. For Luffy, the reunion is even stranger than in canon. He has already regained one brother at Marineford. Now a second brother returns from the dead without ever having died. Luffy cries, laughs, grabs Sabo, and probably forgets the entire operation for several minutes, while Law experiences a new level of regret about forming this alliance. Sabo asks the question that terrifies him. What happened to Ace? Luffy answers that Ace is alive. Sabo's relief is so intense that it almost becomes pain. In canon, he recovers his brothers only after losing one forever. Here, he is given the possibility of seeing both again. But that possibility comes with 11 years of absence. Ace and Luffy believed he was dead. They mourned him, built their lives around that loss, and faced Marineford without knowing he was somewhere in the world. Sabo cannot immediately leave Dressrosa to find Ace. He has a mission, and the country is collapsing. This is where his recovered identity and his chosen duty collide. The boy Sabo wants to run to his brothers. The revolutionary officer understands that thousands of people need the weapons network destroyed. So Sabo stays. Without the flame fruit, his role in the battle looks different. Sabo is already a master of armament haki and the dragon claw style. He can still destroy the Colosseum ring, break weapons, and hold off powerful enemies. If Burgess is absent, Sabo may spend more time helping Koala secure evidence or protecting civilians from Doflamingo's officers. Luffy still must defeat Doflamingo. Ace being alive cannot solve the cage around Dressrosa because Ace is not there, and because this is Luffy's conflict. The people Luffy befriends still place their trust in him. Law still needs Doflamingo's rule ended. The future members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet still witness Luffy's actions, though the exact path that brings them together is altered by the tournament. The birdcage closes. Fujitora gambles on Luffy. The citizens push against the strings. Gear 4th still appears because 2 years of training and the need to break Doflamingo's control remain unchanged. When Luffy wins, Sabo guards him during the recovery. This mirrors Ace carrying Luffy away from Marineford. One brother protected Luffy at the end of the old era. The other protects him during one of the battles that announces his arrival in the new one. After Dressrosa, Sabo makes contact with Ace. At first, neither knows what to say. Ace hears a voice he remembers from a burning shore, and 11 years of grief disappear without warning. His first response may be anger. Sabo was alive. He had joined the revolutionaries. He had become famous enough that Ace might have heard the name without recognizing the face. Why did he never come back? Then Sabo explains the injury, the amnesia, and the moment his memories returned. Ace's anger collapses under the simple fact that his brother is speaking. Their eventual reunion would be messier and more moving than the one between Sabo and Luffy. Luffy accepts miracles almost instantly. Ace interrogates them. He touches Sabo's face to make sure he is real. He punches him for being gone. Then he pulls him into the same rough embrace they shared as children. For the first time since the Gray Terminal, the 3 cups are no longer a memorial. All 3 brothers are alive. That does not mean they become one crew. In fact, their choices make the reunion more meaningful. Luffy will not abandon the Straw Hats. Sabo will not abandon the Revolutionary Army. Ace will not abandon the people left beneath Whitebeard's shadow. They are brothers precisely because they can separate without the bond disappearing. And each now represents a different challenge to the world government. Luffy pursues absolute freedom as a pirate. Sabo fights the system through organized revolution. Ace is the living bloodline the government tried and failed to erase. If the 3 appeared together even once, the photograph would terrify the rulers of the world. The government would try to prevent exactly that image. Cypher Paul increases surveillance around known revolutionary routes. Marines receive new orders to report any contact between Ace and the Straw Hat crew. Akinu, now Fleet Admiral after his duel with Aokiji, treats Ace's survival as unfinished business. He cannot chase one pirate personally across the New World, but he can make every island that helps Ace feel the cost. This pressure pushes Ace farther from ordinary ports and closer to Whitebeard's old intelligence network. It also forces him to confront a question he has avoided since childhood. Does he owe anything to Roger's legacy? Ace hated being defined by his father. He grew up hearing strangers ask whether Roger's child deserved to live. He chose his mother's surname to reject that inheritance. Whitebeard became his father because Whitebeard loved the person Ace actually was. But after Marineford, Roger's name follows him everywhere. Young pirates want to know about the Pirate King, even though Ace barely knew more than they do. Journalists invent claims that Ace will finish his father's journey. The government describes every movement of the Fire Fist pirates as an attempt to claim Roger's throne. In canon, Ace never has to decide how to respond because his story ends before the final race for the One Piece begins. Here, his refusal becomes politically important. Ace publicly says that Roger's treasure belongs to whoever finds it. He does not claim a birthright to Laugh Tale. He does not believe the One Piece should pass from father to son. If Luffy reaches it, it will be because Luffy crossed the sea with his own crew, not because Ace allowed him to inherit anything. This statement strengthens Luffy's reputation. It also makes Ace harder for the government to control through propaganda. They want Roger's son to look like the inevitable continuation of Roger's evil. Ace insists on being Whitebeard's son by choice and no one's heir by blood. Blackbeard understands how dangerous that idea can be. Teach uses inheritance in the opposite way. He steals powers, territories, prisoners, and symbols. He takes whatever history leaves unguarded and claims that fate selected him to possess it. Ace survived by learning that another person's sacrifice is not property. Teach rises by treating the dead as resources. Their conflict is therefore bigger than revenge. Ace and Teach become two answers to the question Whitebeard's death left behind. What does it mean to inherit a great man's will? Ace protects people Whitebeard loved, even when they offer him no power. Teach takes Whitebeard's power, even though he loved no one aboard the ship. That contrast grows while Luffy travels from Dressrosa to Zoo. The Straw Hats discover that Sanji has been taken into a political marriage arranged by Big Mom. They learn about the road poneglyphs and the path toward Laugh Tale. The samurai reveal their alliance against Kaido. And on Zoo, Marco's name returns to the story when Nekomamushi promises to find him. In this timeline, locating Marco is easier because Ace still maintains occasional contact with him. That does not mean Marco immediately joins the alliance. Marco is protecting Whitebeard's home village, and Weevil remains a threat, but Ace can carry the request. The message changes everything for him. Kaido rules Wano. Ace has been there. Years before Marineford, the Spade pirates were stranded in Wano. Ace met Tama, saw people starving under Kaido's rule, and promised to return when she was older. He met Yamato, fought through the night, shared sake, and heard about Odin. Ace wanted to challenge Kaido one day. Then he joined Whitebeard and learned that Odin had once been Whitebeard's brother. In canon, Ace dies before keeping any of those promises. Luffy reaches Wano and carries them forward without fully realizing how much unfinished hope his brother left there. If Ace survives, those promises do not become memorials. They become accusations. For 2 years, Ace has had reasons not to return. Whitebeard's territories were collapsing. Blackbeard was expanding. The Payback War demanded everything the remnants had. After the defeat, Ace lacked an army capable of invading an emperor's closed country. Sailing into Wano alone would have been the exact kind of reckless gesture Marineford taught him to reject. All of that is true. Tama is still hungry. Yamato is still imprisoned. The people of Wano are still waiting for a Dawn Ace, once implied he would help bring. When Ace hears that Luffy has allied with Momonosuke and Law to defeat Kaido, He realizes the opportunity he kept telling himself he needed has finally arrived. The samurai have a plan. The minks have an army. Luffy has a crew. Marco can bring medical support. Ace no longer has to choose between a suicidal solo attack and doing nothing. But first, Luffy sails to Whole Cake Island to retrieve Sanji. Ace is not part of that rescue team. This matters because adding another commander-level fighter to Whole Cake would remove too much danger from the story. More importantly, Ace has learned not to force himself into every crisis involving Luffy. Sanji is Luffy's crewmate. Luffy must be the captain who brings him home. Ace does offer information. The Whitebeard pirates dealt with Big Mom's network for years. He knows which seas are watched, which islands pay tribute, and how quickly news travels through her family. That information helps Nami and the others understand that entering Tato land secretly will be difficult. He also warns Luffy not to fight Big Mom unless there is no other choice. Luffy promises nothing of the kind. Whole Cake Island then develops close to canon. Sanji is trapped between his biological family and the crew that chose him. Big Mom intends to betray the Vinsmokes. Brook secures a copy of the Road Poneglyph. Pedro sacrifices himself. Jin leaves Big Mom's crew and openly commits to Luffy. Katakuri faces Luffy in the mirror world. The difference lies in how Big Mom interprets Ace. She already hates that Luffy challenged her claim to Fishman Island. Now reports suggest that Luffy is connected not only to the Revolutionary Army through his father, but to an active alliance of Roger's surviving son and Whitebeard's remnants. Big Mom is obsessed with political family. She creates power through marriages, bloodlines, and the absorption of other groups into her own. The three brothers represent a family she cannot control because it is based entirely on choice. None share the same parents. None belong to the same organization. Yet all would cross the world for one another. If Big Mom learns that Ace is preparing to move against Kaido, she may suspect a coordinated attempt to overturn the emperors. That makes Luffy's escape from Tato land look less like the desperate success of a small crew and more like the opening move of a new generation. Morgans is delighted by this interpretation. He already exaggerates Luffy's planning after Whole Cake Island and calls him the Fifth Emperor. In this timeline, the newspaper adds that Fire Fist Ace may be supporting him from the shadows. Ace reads the article and laughs so hard that he nearly burns it by accident. Luffy is not following Ace's plan. Ace is barely certain Luffy has a plan. But perception creates real consequences. Pirates who once considered joining Ace now look toward Luffy. Islands threatened by Kaido begin to wonder whether the old Whitebeard network is becoming part of the Straw Hat sphere. The government sees the possibility of an informal alliance that connects a rapidly rising pirate, Roger's son, Whitebeard veterans, the minks, the samurai, and perhaps the revolutionaries through Sabo. No one has designed this coalition. That makes it harder to destroy. There is no headquarters to attack and no single chain of command to break. It is held together by promises. Ace sails toward Wano before Luffy finishes his escape from Whole Cake Island. Marco does not immediately accompany him. He still cannot leave Whitebeard's village undefended while Weevil is active. Instead, Ace contacts Izo, who has a more personal reason to return. He also gathers several former allies willing to help liberate Odin's country. They cannot simply enter through the main waterfall with a fleet. Kaido's forces watch the known approaches, and Ace's face would bring an all-star down upon them before the alliance is ready. So Ace uses the route he learned during his earlier visit. A smaller group enters Wano quietly while the main ships remain outside the country's natural defenses. Ace arrives before Luffy. His first destination is not Onigashima. It is the village where he met Tama. The reunion is painful. Tama spent years believing Ace would return. Then she learned from Luffy in canon that he had died. In this timeline, she has seen newspapers proving that he survived, but Wano is isolated and information arrives slowly. Hope can be cruel when it is repeatedly delayed. When Ace finally stands in front of her, Tama is older, thinner, and angrier. She does not run into his arms immediately. She asks why he took so long. Ace could explain the war, Whitebeard, Blackbeard, and the impossibility of invading Kaido's country with a broken crew. Those explanations are reasonable. To a hungry child, they do not matter. So Ace apologizes. He does not promise that everything will be easy now. He says that an alliance is coming, and that this time he will remain until Wano is free, or until the people of Wano tell him to leave. Tama eventually forgives him, though probably after hitting him. Her kibai fruit immediately becomes an important strategic asset. Ace now knows she can tame ordinary animals, but the Alliance does not yet understand how useful that power will be against Kaido's artificial Zoan users. Keeping Tama hidden becomes one of Ace's first priorities. Ace then tries to contact Yamato. This is more difficult. Yamato is confined on Onigashima and watched by Kaido's forces. In canon, Ace entered the island during Kaido's absence, fought Yamato, and helped break the dragon statue. Returning secretly while Kaido is present requires help from Wano's internal resistance. Through Tama and the remnants of Kozuki supporters, Ace finds a way to send a message. It contains no grand strategy. It says only that he came back. For Yamato, those words change the years of waiting. Ace was one of the first people to treat Yamato's desire for freedom as real. He spoke about Luffy's impossible dream. He promised that strong pirates would one day overturn Kaido's control. After Marineford, Yamato may have learned that Ace survived and wondered whether the promise still mattered to him. Now the answer is inside the fortress. Yamato wants to break out immediately. Ace warns against it. Again, his growth appears through restraint. Freeing Yamato too early would alert Kaido and endanger the planned rebellion. Ace asks Yamato to endure a little longer and gather information about troop numbers, weapons, and the layout of Onigashima. This request is difficult for both of them. Yamato has spent a lifetime being told to wait. Ace has spent a lifetime hating restraint. But a coordinated escape can free an entire country rather than one prisoner. Ace's early presence also changes the relationship with the Akazeya Nine. Some of them distrust him. He is Whitebeard's son, but he is also Roger's biological son, and Wano's history with pirates is complicated. Izo vouches for him. Ace does not ask to command. He gives the samurai intelligence about the outside world, offers ships for evacuation, and accepts that Momonosuke is the political center of the rebellion. When Luffy finally reaches Wano, the reunion happens in the ruins of a country both brothers promise to help. Luffy is surprised for perhaps 1 second, then delighted. Ace is furious that Luffy immediately ate food meant for a starving village, until he learns that Luffy is already trying to repay it. Tama watches the brothers argue and realizes that the reckless pirate who arrived in Curie is exactly the person Ace described years ago. The brothers have not fought side by side since Marineford. They test each other almost immediately. Luffy uses advanced observation haki developed through his fight with Katakuri. Ace uses the steadier haki he learned after the Payback War. Their brief clash sends enough force across the landscape to alarm everyone nearby. Ace is stronger than he was at Marineford. Luffy is much stronger than Ace expected. Then Kaido appears. The first confrontation at Curie changes because Ace is present. In canon, Luffy attacks Kaido in rage after believing his friends have been destroyed. Kaido endures Gear 4th and knocks Luffy unconscious with one blow. That defeat sends Luffy to Udon, where he learns the advanced armament technique needed to hurt Kaido. If Ace joins Luffy immediately, the battle lasts longer. Flames engulf Kaido's dragon form. Ace's haki allows some attacks to matter. Luffy and Ace coordinate instinctively, one stretching through the air while the other controls the space around him. They still lose. This is important. Ace's survival should not make Kaido weak, and two brothers attacking emotionally are not the same as an organized raid. Kaido is an emperor with overwhelming haki, durability, and experience. He has fought Whitebeard, Roger, Rocks, and the strongest people of the old era. Ace and Luffy can surprise him. They cannot defeat him here. Kaido also has a special interest in Ace. Roger's son, Whitebeard's former commander, and the pirate who once invaded Wano have returned together. Capturing both brothers would give Kaido leverage over half the new era. Luffy is struck down. Ace tries to cover his body and is hit by Kaido's club. Unlike Luffy, Ace remains barely conscious because he begins the exchange at a higher level and recognizes the danger sooner. He faces another Marineford choice. He can continue fighting until Kaido kills him, or he can escape and preserve the rebellion. Ace chooses escape, but he cannot carry Luffy away under Kaido's gaze. Law's submarine crew and the hidden samurai execute the contingency Ace insisted upon. Smoke, debris, and spatial manipulation split the battlefield. Ace retreats with the resistance while Kaido takes Luffy to Udon. Ace hates himself for leaving his brother in a prison camp. Law argues that Luffy is more useful inside Udon than dead outside it. The prison contains thousands of potential allies, including Hyagoro. Kaido intends to break Luffy's spirit rather than execute him immediately. A rushed rescue would expose the entire rebellion. This is rational. Ace still wants to burn Onigashima to the sea. The days that follow test whether his growth can survive fear for Luffy. At Marineford, everyone else planned around saving Ace. Now Ace has to trust Luffy to survive captivity. He gathers information, protects Tama, and continues coordinating with Yamato while resisting the urge to abandon the plan. Inside Udon, Luffy's experience is altered by knowing Ace is nearby. He does not need Ace to rescue him. In fact, he assumes Ace understands that he can escape on his own. This trust gives Luffy space to train with Hyagoro. He learns to let haki flow beyond his fist. He inspires the prisoners. He turns captivity into preparation. Queen eventually realizes that Ace is in Wano. The beast pirates spread wanted notices and threaten villages suspected of hiding him. This raises the cost for the rebellion. It also divides Kaido's attention. Some forces search for Ace while Luffy undermines Udon from within. Big Mom then arrives. Her presence makes the alternate timeline even more unstable. She came for Luffy, but Ace is now another prize. Capturing Roger's son would give her an extraordinary political weapon. She might imagine marrying Ace into her family, extracting information about Whitebeard, or using him to bait both Luffy and the remnants. Ace would rather fight Kaido again than participate in that conversation. When Big Mom and Kaido form an alliance, the rebellion faces two emperors just as in canon. Ace's presence does not simplify the war. It is one reason the enemy treats the coming raid as a threat worth crushing completely. The alliance prepares for the Fire Festival. Kinemon still organizes the samurai. Law still works with his crew. Kid still wants revenge after escaping Udon. Luffy continues training. But Ace adds something the canon alliance struggled to obtain until late: reliable communication with Whitebeard's former commanders. Izo commits earlier. Marco remains uncertain until the threat from Weevil changes, but he knows Ace is already inside Wano. When Nekomamushi finally reaches him, Marco no longer sees the request as joining a stranger's war. He sees two of Whitebeard's sons trying to finish something their father could not. Whitebeard did not invade Wano after learning of Oden's death because the potential casualties were enormous and Oden was already gone. Ace's situation is different. The Kozuki heir is alive. The rebellion exists. The people are asking for help. This is not revenge for the dead. It is rescue for the living. Marco agrees. By the night of the raid, the alliance is stronger than in canon. Ace, Izo, and a handful of additional Whitebeard veterans are present from the beginning. Marco arrives with Nekomamushi and helps bypass the waterfall defenses. The samurai have better intelligence from Yamato. Tama's power is protected as a strategic secret. But more strength creates new questions about leadership. Kid does not want to follow Straw Hat. Law barely pretends he is not being dragged by Luffy. The samurai fight for Momonosuke. The Whitebeard veterans respect Ace and Marco. If everyone attacks separately, two emperors will tear them apart. Ace solves part of this problem by refusing supreme command. He tells the Whitebeard pirates that they are guests in Wano and that Kinnaman's plan comes first. He tells Luffy that defeating Kaido is Luffy's promise to Momonosuke, not Ace's inheritance from Oden. Ace will fight, but he will not take the victory away from the people who carried the rebellion for 20 years. This decision may be the clearest evidence that Ace survived Marineford in more than a physical sense. The boy who once tried to defeat Whitebeard alone now knows how to place himself inside someone else's cause. The raid begins. On the surface, adding Ace should allow the Alliance to overwhelm the beast pirates much faster. His flames can clear crowds, burn through structures, and challenge commanders. Marco is less isolated. The samurai have another fighter who can survive at the highest level. But the purpose of the raid is not simply to place every strong person on the roof. Thousands of allies need protection. The gifters need to be turned. Momonosuke must survive. And two emperors can destroy the island if no one contains them. Ace begins near Tama's operation. This frustrates him. He wants Kaido. He wants to reach Yamato. Instead, his first responsibility is escorting a child through a battlefield so that she can give orders to the gifters who ate her dumplings. It is exactly the kind of unglamorous task Whitebeard would have understood. Ace's fire creates corridors through the enemy ranks without burning the converted gifters. Speed, Gazellemon, and the others carry Tama's voice across Onigashima. Once she gives the command, Kaido's numerical advantage begins turning against him. The rebellion gains hundreds of fighters not because Ace defeats them, but because he protects the person capable of changing their loyalties. Meanwhile, Yamato breaks free and confronts Ace in the confusion. Their reunion has no time for the long conversation both imagined. Yamato is carrying Oden's journal, protecting Momonosuke, and trying to reach the roof. Ace sees the explosive shackles Kaido placed on Yamato and understands that his friend was never merely an unhappy child living in a palace. Yamato has been a prisoner for 20 years. Ace offers to destroy the cuffs, but advanced armament Haki is better suited to removing them without triggering the explosion. Luffy still performs that act. This matters to Yamato. Ace returned, but Luffy is the person who arrives at the exact moment Wano's 20-year promise comes due. Ace opened the possibility of freedom years ago. Luffy breaks the chain. That distinction prevents Yamato's story from becoming only an attachment to Ace. Yamato loves Ace, admires Oden, and comes to trust Luffy, but must eventually decide what freedom means personally. The battles inside the dome rearrange around Ace's presence. Marco no longer has to spend as much energy holding King and Queen alone. Ace can challenge King, creating a visually spectacular contest between orange fire and the flames of a Lunarian. Yet this is not necessarily Ace's final matchup. Zoro needs to face King to understand the power of Enma and the nature of advanced conqueror's haki. Sanji needs to face Queen and resolve the terror of becoming like his brothers. If Ace simply defeats one of them, he steals essential growth from the Straw Hats. So Ace holds both commanders long enough for Zoro and Sanji to arrive. He protects Chopper while the Doctor develops the countervirus. He clashes with King and recognizes that the fire on King's back is not ordinary flame. He blocks Queen's attacks and learns enough about the plague weapons to help Marco contain the casualties. Then he withdraws from those duels and leaves them to Luffy's wings. Ace's main battle becomes a moving defense of the Alliance. He fights wherever the raid is about to collapse. When the samurai are overwhelmed, flames divide the enemy. When CP0 begins observing from the shadows, Ace's presence forces them to reconsider how openly they can intervene. When the castle catches fire, Ace can manipulate and absorb parts of the blaze created by ordinary combustion, guiding people toward exits even though he cannot magically command every flame another power produces. This role may sound less dramatic than fighting an emperor, but it is exactly where Ace changes the outcome most. One-piece battles are often decided by whether the right people remain alive long enough for Luffy to win. Ace becomes the person protecting that time. He reaches the roof during the first battle against Kaido and Big Mom. Luffy, Zoro, Law, Kid, and Killer are facing the two emperors. Adding Ace makes 6 members of the new generation, though Ace sits awkwardly between generations. He sailed under an emperor of the old age, yet he is still young enough to stand with the challengers. Big Mom immediately notices him. Kaido remembers their clash at Curie. The emperors mock the idea that Roger's son is following Straw Hat rather than claiming the age for himself. Ace answers that Luffy does not need followers. He needs people willing to fight beside him. The roof battle becomes more balanced, but only slightly. Ace's flames can contest Prometheus and protect the others from some of Big Mom's fire. This is a valuable advantage. He may even disrupt the homie's shape by flooding the area with flame and forcing Big Mom to reassert control. But Zeus, Napoleon, Hera, Kaido's wind, and the Emperor's haki still make the battlefield almost impossible. Ace also sees something in Luffy that he has never witnessed directly. Luffy strikes Kaido with advanced armament haki. Later, he recognizes that Kaido coats attacks with Conqueror's haki and begins doing the same. Ace possessed Conqueror's haki as a child. For much of his life, it was an uncontrolled sign of potential tied to the very bloodline he hated. Watching Luffy use it without hesitation forces Ace to reconsider the power. Luffy does not use the color of the Supreme King because he believes himself superior by birth. He uses it because his will refuses to bend. Ace tries to imitate the coding. He cannot master it instantly. Haki is not a trick copied by observation alone. His first attempts create bursts of pressure, enough to surprise Kaido but not enough to change the battle. This gives Ace a new path rather than an effortless power upgrade. Surviving Marineford has made him wiser. Wano begins making his strength catch up to that wisdom. When the plan shifts towards separating the emperors, Ace helps draw Big Mom away. Fire against fire is symbolically appropriate, but Law and Kid still need to become the central force in her defeat. Ace therefore supports the separation, and then returns to Kaido's side of the island when the lower floors begin collapsing. The Alliance still suffers. The Akazeya 9 are broken by Kaido. Kiku loses an arm. Ashura Doji may still sacrifice himself. Aizo still confronts CP0, though Ace's presence creates a chance to save him. This is one of the clearest lives Ace might preserve. In canon, Aizo fights through enormous injuries, defeats a CP0 agent, and dies. In this timeline, Ace knows Aizo came because of him and because of Odin. When he senses Aizo's fading presence, he reaches the corridor before the final wound becomes fatal. Ace cannot heal him, but Marco can. Together, they pull Aizo away while another ally delays CP0. Saving Aizo is not guaranteed. The raid is chaotic, and Ace cannot be everywhere. But a what-if story should follow consequences, and an additional fast-moving Logia fighter with a personal bond to Aizo is exactly the kind of change that can turn a fatal delay into a rescue. The CP0 agent who would later interfere with Luffy and Kaido now faces another complication. Akinu's government wants Ace dead, but the five elders prioritize preventing the awakening of Luffy's fruit. CP0 receives conflicting opportunities. Ace is the famous bloodline the world already knows. Luffy carries the threat the rulers have hidden for centuries. They choose Luffy. Ace learns too late that an agent is moving toward the roof. He pursues, but King, surviving gifters, collapsing floors, and the burning castle slow him. The agent still distracts Luffy at the crucial moment. Kaido's strike lands. Luffy's voice disappears. Ace feels it. For an instant, Marineford returns. His little brother is falling, and Ace is not close enough to stop it. The old Ace would lose control. He would charge Kaido with no plan, no concern for the island, and no expectation of surviving. The man who escaped Marineford almost does the same. Then Luffy's heartbeat begins again. The sound is strange. Zunesha recognizes it as the drums of liberation. Luffy awakens his fruit and rises in gear 5th. Ace reaches the roof in time to see his brother laughing beneath the moon, his body transformed, his presence filling the battlefield with impossible freedom. Ace has heard Roger compared to many people. He has hated those comparisons whenever they were used against him. But looking at Luffy, he finally understands that inherited will does not mean becoming a copy. Luffy is not Roger Reborn in any literal, obedient sense. He is the next person capable of making the world feel open. Kaido tries to turn the battle into a test of who can carry Joy Boy's name. Luffy barely cares about the title. He wants to free his friends and eat with them. Ace cannot join the final exchange without diminishing it. Instead, he protects the roof from interference. He destroys the last CP0 route. He helps Yamato manage the explosives. When Onigashima threatens to fall, Ace uses enormous jets of flame to slow burning debris, while Momonosuke creates the flame clouds that move the island. Then Luffy's fist descends, Kaido falls, and the country Ace once promised to help is finally free. The victory belongs to Wano and to Luffy. Ace feels no jealousy. That is another answer to the fear that defined his youth. He does not need to surpass Roger, replace Whitebeard, or stand above Luffy in order for his life to have meaning. He kept his promise by helping someone else fulfill it. After the battle, Ace sees Tama eat until she is full. He visits the graves of those who did not live to see the dawn. He apologizes to Oden despite never meeting him. He sits with Marco and Izo, if Izo survives, and speaks about Whitebeard beneath lanterns rising into the sky. Yamato then asks to join Ace's crew. This choice is more complicated than it appears. Ace once promised to take Yamato to sea. If he simply says yes, he fulfills the promise. Yet Yamato has only just been freed, Momonosuke is struggling to protect Wano, and Admiral Ryokugyu soon demonstrates that the country remains vulnerable. In canon, Yamato chooses to stay in Wano for a time, partly to defend it while Momonosuke grows stronger. Ace's presence could pull Yamato in the opposite direction. Years of waiting were tied specifically to the hope that Ace would return. Ace, however, has learned that fulfilling the words of a promise can betray its purpose. He did not promise Yamato a place on a ship because he wanted another fighter. He promised freedom. So he refuses to decide for Yamato. He says the ship will have a place whenever Yamato chooses it. If Yamato stays, it must be a free choice rather than another command from a powerful man. If Yamato leaves, it cannot be only because Oden once left or because Ace once promised. Yamato chooses to remain temporarily, travel through Wano, and help Momonosuke protect the country. This choice now feels less like surrendering a dream because the path to Ace's ship remains open. Freedom is not a door that closes if it is not used immediately. Tama asks the same question. Ace once said she could join when she became a bewitching kunoichi. She is still a child. Ace tells her to train, eat, and decide later whether the sea is truly what she wants. He will not turn her gratitude into recruitment. Before leaving, Ace and Luffy exchange sake. Sabo is not physically present, but a third cup is placed beside them. The brothers have survived long enough for an old ritual to become a future plan. Luffy is now recognized as one of the 4 emperors. This changes Ace's public position again. For most of his life, The world interpreted Luffy as Ace's reckless younger brother. After Wano, Ace is increasingly described as the brother of Emperor Straw Hat Luffy. Ace finds this hilarious. The government finds it alarming. There is a question of whether Ace himself receives an Emperor-level bounty. He helped defeat Kaido's forces, commands a dangerous crew, carries Roger's blood, and remains connected to Whitebeard territories. But bounties are not pure measurements of combat. They describe perceived threat. Ace now threatens the government in several ways at once. He survived a public execution. He rejected Roger's inherited throne. He preserved parts of Whitebeard's network. He is tied to Luffy, Sabo, the Kozuki, the Minks, and perhaps Yamato. He has first-hand knowledge of Marineford and the darkness of Blackbeard's power. And after Wano, witnesses report that his conqueror's haki is beginning to develop. His bounty rises above 2 billion berries, perhaps much higher depending on how much credit the government assigns him for the raid. But he is not named an emperor, because the world has only 4 seats in that convenient headline, and because Ace still lacks the territorial structure associated with the title. This suits him. Ace has spent enough time being forced into names other people chose. The fall of Kaido and Big Mom begins the final race. Luffy, Shanks, Blackbeard, and Buggy are declared the 4 emperors. Law and Kid sail into separate disasters. The world government moves against the warlords. Cross Guild places bounties on Marines. The Revolutionary Army intensifies its attack on the Celestial Dragons. Ace cannot return to a quiet life of guarding islands. The world that executed him is beginning to crack. His first instinct is to pursue Blackbeard. Teach defeated Law and took his road Poneglyph rubbings. He attacked Amazon Lily for Hancock's power. His crew kidnapped Pudding. Garp invaded Hachinasu to rescue Kobe and was left in enemy hands. Every new report brings Blackbeard closer to the center of the age. But Ace now has information he lacked during the Payback War. Sabo has seen the empty throne occupied. The world government's highest secret is no longer merely that the rulers are corrupt. Someone stands above them. After the reverie, Sabo is blamed for Cobra's death and becomes a symbol of rebellion. In canon, the world calls him the Flame Emperor, a title reinforced by Ace's devil fruit. In this timeline, Sabo has no flame power. The newspapers need a different name, perhaps the Dragon's Claw or the Revolutionary Emperor. The exact headline matters less than the political effect. People across rebelling kingdoms raise Sabo's image as proof that the celestial dragons can be challenged. Ace's survival makes the propaganda battle stranger. 2 brothers are becoming rival symbols of fire even though only one literally controls it. Sabo carries the fire of revolution. Ace carries the flame the government failed to extinguish. When Sabo finally explains what happened in the throne room, Ace is forced to think beyond personal enemies. Blackbeard destroyed his family, but the hidden ruler of the world belongs to the system that hunted Ace's mother, searched for pregnant women and infants, condemned him for being born, and turned his execution into public theater. Revenge against Teach is personal. War against the world government is historical. Ace cannot fight both alone, and for the first time he does not try. He begins acting as a bridge. Marco and the Whitebeard remnants distrust large organizations but respect Ace. Sabo and the revolutionaries need roots, ships, and allies in the New World. Luffy's Grand Fleet operates independently but answers to a bond with their captain. The liberated people of Wano cannot openly join a world war yet, but they possess ancient knowledge, weapons, and the Pluton beneath their country. Ace carries messages among groups that would never accept orders from one another. This role also allows the story to explore the difference between the three brothers' ideas of freedom. Sabo believes oppressive institutions must be dismantled through planning. Luffy liberates islands almost accidentally while following immediate bonds. Ace understands communities that depend on the protection of a powerful name. They agree that the celestial dragons must fall. They do not always agree on what should replace them. Ace has seen what happens when a protective empire loses its father. Whitebeard's territories did not become free simply because his flag disappeared. Many became prey. This makes Ace wary of destroying the world government without preparing for the vacuum afterward. Sabo knows that waiting for a perfect replacement can become an excuse to tolerate slavery. Luffy does not want to rule anything. Their alliance, if it forms, would therefore be emotionally powerful and politically unstable. That instability is exactly what makes it feel like One Piece. The heroes are united by the enemy in front of them, not by a shared constitution for the morning after. Before that war arrives, Luffy reaches Egghead. Ace is not aboard the Sunny. So many events remain familiar. The Straw Hats meet Vegapunk. Bonnie confronts the truth about Kuma. CP0 attacks. Kizaru and the Marines surround the island. The five elders reveal forms and powers that make ordinary political explanations feel inadequate. Vegapunk's broadcast begins telling the world that the sea is rising and that the history of the Void Century is connected to an ancient war. Ace hears the message from another island. The revelation strikes him differently than it strikes Luffy. Luffy is concerned with the friends directly in danger. Ace immediately remembers every island Whitebeard protected near the sea. He thinks of villages with no mountain, no great ship, and no government evacuation plan. The old network he could not preserve as territory may still be useful as a rescue system. Ace orders his allies to stop waiting for a final battle and begin moving people, food, and ships. This is where his alternate arc reaches beyond combat. The world may flood. Empires are fighting over ancient weapons. The government is willing to erase islands. A pirate who spent 2 years learning roots and local loyalties can save people before any final punch is thrown. Whitebeard used his name as a roof over vulnerable communities. Ace begins turning that roof into a fleet. Egghead also gives Ace a reason to reconsider Vegapunk as a person, rather than only a government scientist. The pacifistas at Marineford wore Kuma's face and fired beams into Whitebeard's family. To Ace, that technology is tied to the day he nearly died. Bonnie's story reveals the cruelty behind it. Kuma did not become a weapon because he lacked humanity. He surrendered his body through a bargain made to save his daughter. Ace recognizes the pattern. The government takes love, sacrifice, and family, then turns them into instruments of control. It used Rouge's death to hunt a child. It used Garp's duty to isolate his grandsons. It used Ace's love for Whitebeard to bait a war. It used Kuma's love for Bonnie to create obedient weapons. Surviving Marineford means Ace can see that pattern extending beyond himself. When Vegapunk's message confirms that the world is in danger, Ace's symbolic importance grows again. The government can dismiss pirates as criminals and revolutionaries as terrorists. Ace is both a pirate and the survivor of a public execution whose purpose everyone witnessed. When he tells islands that the government may not protect them, people remember that the government once assembled its entire force to kill him while pirates died to bring him home. That does not make Ace universally trusted. Some people lost relatives to pirates inspired by Roger. Others remember destruction caused by Whitebeard's era. Ace cannot erase those fears with one speech. What he can do is send ships. The Fire Fist network begins evacuating low islands, mapping currents, and storing food on higher ground. Former Whitebeard allies who refuse to join another war agree to help with this. They are not swearing loyalty to a new emperor. They are doing the work their father would have done. Marco becomes central to the medical side. Izo, if alive, reconnects Wano's resources to the wider sea. Jinma's knowledge of currents and Fishman Island becomes invaluable. Even the Grand Fleet can help, though its captains interpret every request as proof that Luffy secretly commands the whole operation. Luffy, when he hears about this, is pleased that people will have food. He has no interest in correcting the political theory. The move toward Elbaf and the last road Poneglyph continues around Ace rather than through him. This is important. Ace does not suddenly collect rubbings and race Luffy to Laugh Tale. He has already rejected the idea that Roger's destination belongs to him. If he joined the Sunny for the final journey, the world would once again treat him as the heir guiding everyone toward his father's treasure. Ace stays away from the route on purpose. That choice is not easy. He is curious. Whitebeard told the world the treasure was real, and Ace spent years aboard the ship of a man who knew Roger. Part of him wants to understand what kind of discovery could make his father laugh and start an age that consumed so many lives. But Ace realizes that curiosity is different from destiny. He can choose not to let Roger define the shape of his adventure. Instead, Ace turns toward Hachinasu. Garp is missing after rescuing Kobe. Reports suggest he remained behind while the younger Marines escaped. Blackbeard's crew controls the island. The situation is almost designed to drag Ace into an emotional trap. Garp's place in Ace's life is painful. He raised Ace in the loose, violent way Garp raises children. He wanted Ace and Luffy to become Marines, ignored their objections, left them with Dadden, and still loved them fiercely. At Marineford, Garp sat beside Ace on the execution platform. He cried, but he did not free him. Duty kept him in place until Luffy reached the platform, and then love kept him from striking his grandson with full force. Ace could resent him for the rest of his life. He could also understand Garp better now than he did on the scaffold. Ace has spent years choosing between family and responsibility. He knows that refusing a choice does not remove its cost. Garp served a corrupt institution while believing the Marines could protect ordinary people. That belief made him a hero in many kingdoms and a participant in Ace's attempted execution. Now Garp is a prisoner of the man who captured Ace. The old Ace would rush to Hachinasu immediately. The new Ace gathers information. He contacts Sword through indirect channels. Kobe wants to rescue Garp, but cannot openly command a marine operation. Akinu may consider Garp's capture a strategic problem, yet committing the fleet to a pirate island while the world is destabilizing would be dangerous. Cross-guilds bounties have also made every marine movement more difficult. Ace contacts Sabo. The Revolutionary Army does not owe Garp a rescue, but Dragon does not easily ignore his father's possible death. Their relationship is distant, and Dragon's war against the Celestial Dragons must come first. Still, a captured Garp gives Blackbeard leverage over Marines and revolutionaries alike. Ace contacts Luffy last. This is another sign of growth. He does not hide the danger in order to protect his little brother. He gives Luffy the truth and lets him decide. Luffy wants to turn toward Hachinasu immediately. Whether the Straw Hats can do so depends on their position in the final race. If they are already committed to protecting Elbaf or escaping another government assault, abandoning everyone there could create a greater disaster. Ace tells Luffy not to come until his current friends are safe. That sentence mirrors Whitebeard's order at Marineford. Ace finally understands how painful it is to tell someone who loves you to keep moving. The first Hachinasu operation is therefore a rescue mission, not the final war against Blackbeard. Ace leads a small force of Fire Fist pirates, former Whitebeard scouts, and perhaps unofficial Sword members. Sabo cannot openly bring the Revolutionary Army, but he may join personally or send intelligence through allies. Their objective is simple: locate Garp, confirm whether he is alive, and extract him without challenging all 10 Titanic captains at once. Blackbeard anticipates this. Teach knows Ace better than almost any enemy does. He captured him once by presenting exactly the kind of fight Ace could not refuse. He now places rumors where Ace will hear them. Some say Garp is being tortured. Others say the old man will be publicly traded to the government. A few claim that Blackbeard intends to execute Garp on the same island where pirates elect their king. Each story is a hook. Ace recognizes them because he has become familiar with the shape of his own anger. Hachinasu is built for chaos. The island itself can move under Pizarro's power. Shiryu can vanish. Van Augur can transport fighters across the battlefield. Cuzin's presence is impossible to interpret. He fought Garp, but his true relationship with Blackbeard remains uncertain. Any rescue route can become a trap the moment the island shifts. Ace's Logia ability is useful but not decisive. Fire illuminates spaces where Shiryu might hide, yet visibility does not cancel invisibility. Heat can weaken ice, but Cuzin can freeze enormous regions faster than Ace can safely melt them around prisoners. Darkness remains the natural counter to Ace's body. The raid succeeds only because it refuses to behave like a duel. Sword creates a disturbance near the harbor. Ace's crew enters through tunnels used by prisoners and smugglers. Former Whitebeard pirates recognize storage routes teach copied from old habits. Sabo, if present, breaks through stone without using a devil fruit, making him especially valuable if the sea floods lower passages. They find Garp alive but heavily injured, perhaps frozen to preserve him as leverage. Garp's first reaction to seeing Ace is not gratitude. It is anger that another grandson has entered a pirate fortress to rescue him. Ace tells him that this seems to run in the family. The escape forces Ace into a direct clash with Cuzin. This is emotionally complex. Cuzin helped execute the Buster Call at O'Hara, served as an admiral, and fought at Marineford. Yet he also spared people, left the Marines after losing to Akinu, and may not fully belong to Blackbeard. Ace cannot know whether Cuzin is an enemy, an infiltrator, or a man pursuing a private idea of justice. Their powers create a field of steam. Ace asks why Cuzin joined the pirate who murdered Whitebeard. Cuzin asks why Ace still assumes that joining a crew reveals the whole person. Neither receives a complete answer. Cuzin allows no obvious escape, but one opening appears at exactly the right moment. Perhaps Garp created it earlier by challenging his former student. Perhaps Cuzin wants the prisoners removed before Blackbeard can use them. Perhaps he simply loses one exchange. The ambiguity remains. Ace carries Garp toward the ship. This reverses Marineford again. There, Garp watched Ace face execution and could not move. Here, Ace has every reason to leave the old man with the consequences of his choices. Instead, he carries him. Teach arrives before they can escape. Blackbeard's presence turns the operation from dangerous to almost impossible. Darkness pulls Ace across the ground. Earthquakes shatter the harbor. Garp is too injured to fight at full strength. Sword's ships begin breaking apart. Teach laughs that Ace has finally returned for their third match. Banaro Island ended with Ace defeated. The payback war ended with Ace retreating. Hachinasu can finish the story. Ace wants that fight. Years of discipline do not remove the desire. Blackbeard still carries Thatch's blood, Whitebeard's power, and the memory of every person lost at Marineford. Then Ace looks at Garp and the escaping Marines. He refuses. Ace creates a vast curtain of flame, not to overpower the darkness, but to force Blackbeard's crew to protect the island's weapons and prisoners. Sabo breaks the harbor wall. The sea pours into the lower district. Jin, or another helmsman, guides the rescue ship through a route prepared in advance. Ace uses Haki to endure Teach's pull long enough for Marco to seize him from the air. They escape with Garp. Blackbeard claims Ace ran from him again. The newspapers may repeat it. Ace no longer cares. The rescue has strategic consequences. Garp cannot return to ordinary marine service as if nothing happened. He now owes his life to pirates, revolutionaries, and sword officers acting against formal orders. His survival deepens the division inside the Marines between those who serve people and those who serve the celestial dragons. Kobe represents a new justice. Fujitora openly challenges cruelty. Smoker has long distrusted the government's version of events. Garp, weakened but alive, can finally admit that refusing promotion did not free him from responsibility for the institution he served. Ace does not ask Garp to become a pirate or revolutionary. He asks him to choose where he will stand when the government turns its weapons on civilians. That choice becomes urgent as the truth of the Void Century spreads. Kingdoms rebel. The Revolutionary Army's siege cuts supplies to the Holy Land. The Marines are ordered to protect celestial dragons while coastal populations prepare for disaster. Ancient weapons become more than legend. The destruction of Lulusia demonstrates that an island can vanish in moments. The final war will not be one clean battle with two armies facing each other. It will be several conflicts colliding. Luffy and the other emperors race toward the One Piece. Blackbeard seeks whatever power history buried. The Revolutionary Army attacks the structure of the world government. The Marines divide over justice. Imu and the Five Elders attempt to preserve a world built on secrecy. And ordinary islands face the rising sea. Ace can influence every part of this war without becoming its single hero. His most important decision is to unite rescue routes before the battles begin. Whitebeard's former allies, Fishman crews, revolutionary cells, sympathetic Marines, and members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet establish signals for evacuation. This network has no formal name. Ace resists every dramatic suggestion. Morgans calls it the Flame Fleet anyway. The network changes how the government uses fear. Erasing one island no longer guarantees silence if ships are already watching the horizon and carrying witnesses away. Buster calls become harder to hide. Marine officers receive direct requests to protect civilians rather than facilities. Each officer must choose whether justice means obeying the order or answering the distress signal. Ace has transformed the symbol of fire. At Marineford, fire marked the bloodline the government wanted to extinguish. Now a flame raised at a harbor means that someone is coming to help. Meanwhile, Luffy approaches Laugh Tale. Ace does not join him, but their stories remain connected. Blackbeard cannot allow Luffy to reach the final island uncontested. The conflict between the Straw Hats and the Blackbeard pirates has been growing since Jaya. Teach is Luffy's dark reflection, a man who believes in dreams but pursues them through exploitation, patience, and theft. Ace has his own claim to that confrontation. Teach captured him and killed Whitebeard. If Ace is alive, many viewers would expect him to defeat Blackbeard. But Ace killing Teach alone would weaken both stories. For Luffy, Blackbeard is a rival for the One Piece and a direct threat to his friends. For Ace, Teach is the temptation to reduce an entire second life to revenge. The strongest resolution allows both brothers to confront him while giving each a different victory. The final battle with Blackbeard could happen at Hachinasu, near Laugh Tale, or on an island torn apart by the Tremor fruit. Wherever it occurs, Teach would target Ace psychologically before he targets him physically. He would claim that every event since Marineford proves fate favors Blackbeard. Ace survived only to watch Teach become an emperor, steal road poneglyphs, capture Garp, and approach the treasure Roger left behind. Ace can answer that survival was never evidence that fate selected him to win. It was a responsibility. The battle divides naturally. The Straw Hats face the Titanic captains. Sabo or revolutionary allies disrupt Blackbeard's external support. Ace helps contain the Quake power because he understands what Whitebeard could do and recognizes the rhythm of attacks Teach never truly earned. Luffy faces Teach directly. Ace may save Luffy during the battle, but not by taking a fatal blow through the chest. That image is too important to repeat without change. When darkness pulls Luffy toward an earthquake strike, Ace intervenes with haki-coated flame and is pulled beside him. The brothers absorb the impact together, neither placing his life above the other's. Luffy then tells Ace to trust him. Ace does. He leaves the final clash to his little brother and turns to protect the crews from the island collapsing around them. This is not retreat. It is the choice Teach has never understood. Ace does not need to possess the victory in order to share its meaning. Luffy defeats Blackbeard, though the exact mechanism depends on secrets the manga has not yet revealed. Teach's unusual body, the reason he can hold multiple fruits, the nature of the D, and the full power of darkness. Ace contributes by preventing Teach from isolating Luffy the way he isolated Ace on Banaro Island. Blackbeard loses because the brothers refuse the lonely duel he built his rise upon. After Teach falls, Ace stands before the stolen Tremor power's end. If Blackbeard dies, the fruit may return somewhere in the world. Ace does not try to claim it. He does not search for a new user who can restore Whitebeard's empire. Some inheritances should be released. Thatch and Whitebeard are avenged, but Ace does not feel complete. Revenge was never capable of giving back what he lost. The victory simply removes a man who would have continued hurting others. That emotional difference prepares Ace for his final confrontation with Akinu. Akinu is the man who killed Ace in the original story. Even in this alternate timeline, he remains the person who came closest. He hunted Luffy through the retreat, tried to turn Ace's love for Whitebeard into a weakness, and built his rise to fleet admiral around the belief that pirates must be destroyed without compromise. For years, Ace would imagine their rematch. Fire would meet magma again. This time, Ace would be stronger. This time, his haki would overcome the difference between their fruits. This time, Akinu would understand that Roger's son could not be erased. But a final war complicates revenge. Akinu is not the hidden ruler of the world. He is a believer and an enforcer. He despises pirates, yet he has also shown frustration when the five elders conceal information or manipulate events above him. The Marines under his command include cruel officers, frightened recruits, genuine protectors, secret rebels, and people who have never seen the empty throne. If Ace burns Marine headquarters without distinction, he becomes the monster Akinu always said he was. Their confrontation likely begins when the government orders the Marines to stop mass evacuations. Perhaps the rulers need civilians contained to prevent information from spreading. Perhaps ships are being reserved for nobles. Perhaps a weapon can target clustered populations more easily than scattered fleets. The exact command matters less than the line it forces every Marine to see. Akinu orders the Flame Fleet halted because unauthorized pirate movement threatens global order. Ace refuses because order that leaves people to drown deserves to be threatened. The two meet at a harbor filled with evacuation ships. Their powers recreate Marineford. Magma falls like burning stone. Fire spreads across the sky. The difference is that Ace no longer fights with an execution platform behind him. He stands between Akinu and civilians who are trying to escape. Akinu repeats the old attack on Whitebeard's legacy. He calls the rescue fleet a collection of criminals hiding behind charity. He says Ace only protects these people to build an empire and prove himself worthy of Roger. Years earlier, that accusation would have reached him. Now Ace knows why he is there. He does not turn toward the insult. He keeps his eyes on the ships. Akinu's magma is still hotter than Ace's ordinary flame. Devil fruit relationships in One Piece are not always absolute, especially when haki and awakened abilities enter the battle. But Ace cannot win by repeating the same exchange with a larger fire fist. His growth has to appear in how he fights. Ace uses observation haki to redirect attacks before they reach the harbor. He uses armament haki when contact cannot be avoided. His Conqueror's haki, developed through Wano and later battles, coats bursts of flame with will powerful enough to strike Akinu without surrendering his body to the magma. He shapes the battlefield, drawing heat upward and away from wooden ships. Akinu remains terrifying. He fought Aokiji for 10 days and transformed half an island. Ace cannot defeat him quickly, and a prolonged duel would destroy the very harbor Ace is protecting. Then Sabo arrives. In canon, Sabo inherits Ace's fruit, so fans naturally imagine Sabo carrying Ace's flame against Akinu. Here, Ace still possesses that flame. Sabo brings something else, the strength he built before memory returned. His dragon claw cracks the ground beneath magma channels. His haki breaks weapons and opens evacuation routes. The brothers do not share a devil fruit. They share an enemy and a promise. Their cooperation defeats Akinu's favorite weapon. He isolates people by forcing them to prove the purity of their beliefs. Ace and Sabo do not need to agree on every political question to protect the same harbor. Garp and members of Sword may arrive as well. Garp confronting Akinu would expose the marine conflict that Marineford left unresolved. At Ace's execution, Garp chose the institution until his family stood directly before him. Now the institution has ordered him to abandon civilians, and he no longer has the excuse that pirates alone are creating the danger. Garp does not need to strike Akinu from behind. He can stand in front of the evacuation ships and tell the Marines that anyone who wants to call himself a protector will defend the people first. Some Marines follow him. Others follow Akinu. The split weakens the government at the moment. Most needs obedience. Ace eventually has an opportunity to kill Akinu. Perhaps Sabo breaks the Admiral's defense. Perhaps Garp lands a blow that leaves Akinu exposed. Perhaps Ace's new haki finally pushes through the magma and places a flaming fist against the man's chest. Killing him would feel like justice for a moment. Then the harbor begins collapsing, or a ship full of civilians catches fire, or a wounded Marine falls into the sea. Ace has time for only one choice. He saves them. Akinu survives because Ace refuses to value revenge above life. This does not forgive him. It does not erase Marineford. It proves that Ace is no longer controlled by the man who once manipulated him with a sentence. Whether Akinu later dies, is imprisoned, or turns his anger toward the rulers who used the Marines depends on the final shape of the war. Ace's victory is already complete. Akinu cannot make him stop running toward the people who need him. The discovery of the One Piece then changes the scale of the conflict. Whitebeard predicted that when someone found Roger's treasure, the world would be turned upside down. The treasure is not simply wealth. It is connected to the Void Century, Joy Boy, the Ancient Kingdom, and the structure of the planet itself. Whatever Luffy finds on Laugh Tale, he returns with knowledge the government has killed generations to suppress. Ace finally learns what Roger learned. This moment could have dominated his life. He is Roger's son receiving the truth at the end of Roger's journey. Everyone expects a revelation about blood, destiny, or a task passed from father to child. Instead, Luffy tells him the story in the least dignified way possible, probably skipping important details and focusing on whatever made the crew laugh. Robin provides the coherent version. Ace learns that Roger arrived too early. He learns why the Pirate King surrendered, how the ancient weapons fit into the world's geography, and what Joy Boy left unfinished. He may learn that Roger never wanted his biological child to inherit a throne. Roger wanted someone in the future to possess the freedom and timing needed to act. For Ace, the most important revelation is not that his father selected him. It is that Roger's story was never a command. Ace can understand Roger without becoming him. He may even laugh, not because every wound disappears, but because the man whose name poisoned Ace's childhood turns out to have been as flawed, strange, and temporary as every other human being. The Pirate King was not a god living inside Ace's blood. He was a man who reached an island, discovered he was too early, and trusted the future. That realization removes one of the last chains around Ace's identity. The final enemy is not Roger's shadow. It is the system that turned history into a weapon. Imu's rule depends on distance. Most people do not know the empty throne is occupied. They do not see the 5 elders' true power. They experience the world government through taxes, marines, flags, courts, and stories about enemies. The rulers can erase a kingdom and then erase the fact that it existed. The final war destroys that distance. Vegapunk's broadcast begins the process. Robin and the scholars' inherited research continues it. Vivi can testify about Cobra. Sabo can describe the throne. Wapol, despite himself, witnessed the truth. Survivors of erased islands give the history human faces. Luffy brings whatever proof or message waits on Laugh Tale. Ace contributes his own body as evidence. The government announced that Roger's blood was an evil requiring death. It hunted mothers and babies to ensure Ace would never exist. Then, when he did exist, it tried to execute him before the world. Ace standing alive beside people the government calls enemies exposes the logic of inherited guilt. If blood can make a baby criminal, the rulers can define anyone as guilty before an action is taken. Ace speaks publicly, but he does not deliver a polished revolutionary address. That would feel unlike him. His message is direct. He says he spent his childhood asking whether he deserved to be born. The government tried to answer no. Whitebeard, Luffy, Sabo, and everyone who came to Marineford answered yes. No ruler has the right to make that decision for another person. Across the world, people understand. The speech does not defeat Imu. Ideas do not physically stop ancient weapons, but it strips away obedience. Kingdoms refuse orders. Marines lower weapons. Workers sabotage supply lines to the Holy Land. Slaves revolt when they realize the gods above them can bleed. The military battle centers on the Red Line, the Holy Land, and whatever power Imu uses to control the world. The geography may change. Fishman Island is prophesied to be destroyed by Luffy. The Red Line may fall. The seas may join. The All Blue may be created. These are theories rather than confirmed outcomes, but Ace's role remains consistent across them. He protects the evacuation. If Fishman Island must be destroyed so its people can move beneath the sun, Ace helps guide ships through fire and falling stone. If Mary Geoise collapses, He refuses to leave enslaved people behind simply because some once served the nobles. If the sea rises during the use of an ancient weapon, the flame fleet carries people toward high ground. Fire is usually dangerous on ships. Ace learns to make it a beacon instead. The final war also gives him one more encounter with the five elders. These are the men who authorized the search for Roger's child, approved the public execution, and treated Ace's life as a problem of lineage. They may consider him insignificant compared with Nika, the ancient weapons, and Imu's survival. That insult would once have angered Ace. Now it frees him. He does not need to be the center of their prophecy to destroy what they built. Ace fights beside people rather than for a bloodline. Marco's blue flames cross his orange ones. Sabo breaks the ground with his claws. Yamato may finally leave Wano to join the battle after Momonosuke proves capable of defending the country. Tama, if enough time has passed, may sail with a Wano force, though Ace will still insist she is not old enough for half the things she wants to do. Jinbe coordinates the sea. Kobe and Fujitora lead Marines who choose civilians over the celestial dragons. The war becomes the family Ace never believed he deserved, expanded across the world. Then the story creates one final echo of Marineford. Luffy reaches Imu, or the weapon at the center of the conflict. He has pushed Gear 5th beyond its limit. His heartbeat weakens. An attack capable of killing him descends, and Ace is close enough to intervene. The audience knows this image. Ace knows it too, even though in this timeline the fatal version never happened. Everything in his character points toward the same decision. He loves Luffy. He has always been willing to die for him. A heroic sacrifice would complete the circle. Ace steps in front of the attack. But survival has changed what sacrifice means. He does not simply spread his arms and accept death. He blocks with every form of haki he has learned. He uses flame to change the angle. He calls for help. Sabo strikes from one side. Yamato or Marco reinforces the defense. Luffy, barely conscious, reaches forward rather than allowing his brother to carry the whole burden. The attack breaks through and wounds Ace badly, but it does not pass through him alone. This is the emotional answer to Marineford. Love does not require one brother to become a corpse so the other can continue. The three brothers' promise was to live freely, not to compete over who could die most beautifully. Ace falls, and for a moment everyone fears the story has corrected itself. Then his fingers move. Marco reaches him. Chopper works beside revolutionary doctors. Law may use the power that once saved Luffy after Marineford. Ace's survival depends on other people again, and this time he does not interpret that dependence as shame. While Ace is treated, Luffy returns to the battle. He does not fight only from grief. He fights with the knowledge that Ace is alive behind him, and that winning will give all of them a future. Imu's defeat belongs to Luffy and to the generations of people whose freedom was stolen. Ace helps make the victory possible, but he is not the prophesied center. That is fitting. His entire life was damaged by people treating ancestry as destiny. His greatest contribution is proving that a person can matter without being the chosen one. When the hidden ruler falls, the sea does not instantly become peaceful. This is where a serious what if must resist the easy ending. The world government administered trade, law, communication, and protection across many kingdoms, even while its highest rulers were monstrous. Destroying the celestial dragons does not automatically replace those systems. Pirates still raid towns. Weapons still circulate. Old kings still exploit subjects. The sea may be geographically transformed, creating refugee crises and conflicts over new routes. Ace understands this better than he would have before Marineford. He watched Whitebeard's territories collapse when one man disappeared. He knows that removing a tyrant and building safety are different tasks. Luffy will not become king in the political sense. He wants the title of Pirate King because it represents freedom, not administration. Sabo and the revolutionaries are better prepared to support new governments, but they cannot dictate the future of every island without becoming another centralized power. The Marines will need to be rebuilt around a new meaning of justice. Kobe, Fujitora, Smoker, and other reformers may create a force accountable to the kingdoms it protects. Garp may advise them while refusing every formal title offered, maintaining at least one lifelong habit. Ace's fleet becomes part of the transition. It escorts food, protects small islands from raiders, and helps former Whitebeard territories choose their own alliances. Ace does not plant his flag everywhere. He offers protection while communities build defenses and agreements that can survive after he leaves. This is the lesson Whitebeard's death taught him. A father's love can save a family, but a world protected by one invincible father remains fragile. There is, however, a darker version of this alternate history. Ace surviving Marineford does not guarantee that he learns the right lesson. He could interpret Whitebeard's death as a debt that can be paid only with Blackbeard's blood. He could seize command of the remnants before he is ready, launch the payback war early, and lead even more of his family to death. Teach could capture him a second time. Kaido could defeat him in Wano. Akinu could finish the attack he began. Luffy might also grow differently. Without Ace's death, he might reject the 2-year separation and rush to reunite with his crew. The Straw Hats would enter the new world without sufficient haki, and an encounter with Caesar, Doflamingo, Big Mom, or Kaido could end the journey. Sabo might never recover his memories. Without the flame fruit at Dressrosa, the brothers might pass near each other without meeting. These outcomes are possible because one changed event does not remove character flaws. Ace remains proud. Luffy remains impatient. Blackbeard remains opportunistic. The world government remains powerful. So why follow the more hopeful path? Because Ace's final decision at Marineford has to mean something. For him to survive, he must already make the choice he failed to make in canon. He must place Whitebeard's will above his wounded pride. That single act does not make him perfectly wise, but it gives him evidence that walking away can preserve the people he loves. The lesson would be reinforced immediately. Whitebeard dies after ordering Ace to leave. Luffy collapses because he pushed beyond his limits. The remnants suffer when they pursue Teach. Every stage of Ace's new life asks the same question in a different form. Can he protect love without turning it into an excuse for self-destruction? That is why the payback war still ends in defeat but not annihilation. It is why Ace does not replace Luffy in Dressrosa or Wano. It is why he rescues Garp rather than finishing a duel with Teach. It is why he saves the harbor rather than killing Akinu. These are not unrelated acts of restraint. They are the long consequence of the second when Ace kept running at Marineford. The darker branches still leave scars on the hopeful one. Sabo's delayed memories mean he spends 2 more years without his brothers. The Whitebeard remnants still lose their father and much of their territory. Luffy still carries guilt for the people who died around him. Wano remains oppressed until the planned raid. Ace cannot save everyone merely by being alive. Some deaths could even become more likely. The government may attack islands that shelter Ace. Pirates inspired by his escape may start wars in Roger's name. The stronger Whitebeard presence at Wano may cause Kaido to deploy deadlier weapons earlier. A rescue attempt at Hachinasu could cost members of Sword their lives. Every additional alliance gives the government another reason to escalate. Ace would have to live with the uncomfortable truth that survival creates consequences as surely as death does. That is central to why his continued life is interesting. In canon, Ace's death becomes meaningful through Luffy, Sabo, Tama, Yamato, and everyone who carries his memory. In this timeline, Ace cannot control what his survival means to others. He becomes a symbol to pirates he does not know, a threat to civilians who fear Roger, a hope to rebels, and a political problem to allies. He has to separate the value of his life from the stories built around it. After the final war, the world tries to give him another title. Some call him the Pirate King's heir because Luffy found the One Piece and Ace shares his brotherhood. Others call him the second Whitebeard because of the rescue fleet. A few call him the Flame Emperor, transferring the title that Sabo might have carried in another life. There are proposals to place him in charge of New World territories or make him the guardian of a new alliance. Ace refuses all of them. He remains captain of his crew. That is enough. His first journey after the war is not toward a treasure. It is back through the places his life changed. He visits Whitebeard's home village. Marco has spent years protecting it without seeking recognition. The village survived the upheaval, though perhaps not untouched. Ace brings records of the people the evacuation fleet saved and places them near Whitebeard's grave. He tells his father that the family did not remain together in the form either of them imagined. Some became doctors, some returned home, some sailed with Ace, some died, others found new crews. The old flag no longer controls an empire. But the family continued. Ace no longer apologizes for being alive. He thanks Whitebeard for insisting upon it. Marco may finally tell him that this was what the old man wanted from the beginning. Whitebeard did not sail to Marineford because he thought Ace's life would repay the crew. He sailed because Ace was his son. Love was not an investment that needed a return. For someone raised to believe his existence required justification, accepting unconditional love may be harder than any battle. Ace then returns to Wano. Momonosuke is older in judgment if not in actual years, and the country is opening carefully. Yamato has traveled across the regions and learned that Oden's path cannot simply be reenacted. Tama has trained, grown healthier, and continued mastering her skills. If enough time has passed, Yamato joins Ace's crew. This would fulfill their promise without trapping Yamato inside it. Yamato sails not as Oden's copy and not as Kaido's son, but as a person who chose the sea after learning the country left behind. Tama may also join later, though Ace enforces the same conditions Shanks once gave Luffy in spirit. Childhood enthusiasm is not the same as readiness. If Tama becomes a capable Kunoichi and still wants the sea, Ace keeps his word. Her presence would be a living reminder that promises can survive delay. Izo, if saved, faces a choice between remaining in Wano and returning to sea. He may stay close to Kiku, helping connect the country to the outside world, or he may occasionally sail with Ace as an advisor who remembers both Oden and Whitebeard. Either choice gives him a future beyond dying in a corridor. Ace next visits Fishman Island, especially if the final war forced its people to relocate. He pays respect to Whitebeard's old protection and to Jin's decision to stand with Luffy. The island's future represents the difference between protection and freedom. Whitebeard's flag kept many enemies away, but the people still lived beneath a hostile world. True change requires them to live beneath the sun without depending on one pirate's reputation. Ace helps escort the first families, then lets Fishman leaders shape what comes next. He visits Alabasta, where the memory of Cobra and the return of Vivi may help build a new political order. Ace once passed through the country searching for Blackbeard and briefly reunited with Luffy. Now he returns without a chase ahead of him. Vivi understands what it means to carry a family name while rejecting the behavior associated with it. Their conversation would reveal how far Ace has moved from believing blood is a verdict. He visits Dressrosa, where Sabo recovered his memories. The Colosseum no longer contains Ace's fruit because Ace still carries it. That absence changed the entire path of the brothers' reunion. Sabo jokes that he did not need to become fire to remember their bond. Ace replies that one fire user in the family already causes enough property damage. And eventually, Ace returns to Dawn Island. Daden has spent years believing she failed the boys entrusted to her. She watched news of Sabo's supposed death, Ace's execution, Luffy's invasion of Marineford, and the war that followed. In canon, Ace never returns to let her express both rage and relief. This time, he walks into the mountain hideout alive. Daden punches him before she hugs him. She demands to know why he was captured, why he made Luffy enter a war, why he took so long to come home, and whether he has eaten properly. Ace accepts every blow. For a moment, he is not Roger's son, Whitebeard's commander, or the symbol of a new age. He is the difficult child Daden raised. Makino sees him too. The village that heard of his birth through scandal and war now sees the adult he became. Ace can visit the place where Luffy first learned to dream about pirates, perhaps while Shanks is absent, or perhaps after the red-hair pirate's role in the final race has reached its conclusion. Shanks and Ace deserve a final conversation. Ace once sought Shanks out to thank him for saving Luffy. Shanks later ended the war that allowed Ace to escape. Their relationship carries Roger between them, even though neither wants it to dominate. Shanks may reveal more about what Roger expected from the future. Ace listens, but he does not ask whether Roger would be proud. That question no longer controls him. He asks whether Shanks is proud of Luffy. The answer is obvious. Garp's reunion with Daden is less peaceful. She nearly killed him after Marineford in canon because his duty did not save Ace. Here, Ace stands between them before she can finish the job, though he lets her land several hits. Garp complains that his injuries from Hachinasu and the final war should earn him mercy. No one agrees. Later, Ace and Garp speak alone. Garp apologizes. This apology cannot repair the execution platform. He chose to sit there. He served a system that made Ace's birth a crime. Love does not cancel responsibility. Ace does not tell him that everything was fine. He says that he understands why Garp believed in the Marines, but understanding is not forgiveness granted on command. If they rebuild a relationship, it will happen through what Garp does next. Garp accepts that. For once, he cannot solve the problem with a fist or a training exercise. Their relationship remains imperfect, which makes it more believable. Ace can love Garp, resent him, rescue him, and refuse to excuse him all at once. The human heart can carry contradictions without selecting one as the official truth. Sabo returns when revolutionary work allows. The three brothers finally sit together without a battlefield around them. They pour sake again. As children, they became brothers because each was trying to escape a life chosen by someone else. Sabo fled nobility. Ace fled Roger's name. Luffy chased the freedom represented by Shanks and the sea. Their bond was an agreement that family could be chosen. As adults, each has helped remake the world through a different path. Sabo dismantled the power of nobles. Luffy found the treasure and became Pirate King. Ace survived the attempt to turn his blood into a death sentence. None outranks the others at the table. Luffy probably eats the food meant for all three. Some things should not change. Ace's long-term future is deliberately less grand than people expect. He does not become Pirate King after Luffy. He does not inherit the empty throne. He does not rebuild Whitebeard's empire exactly as it was. Those endings would trap him inside the identities of other men. He sails. The Fire Fist pirates travel through a world with new routes and old dangers. They help islands threatened by raiders, but they also seek adventures with no historical significance at all. Ace can finally visit a town without asking whether his existence has changed the era. He can lose money, argue with his crew, fall asleep in a meal, and wake to strangers staring at him in alarm. He can be ordinary in the ways a famous pirate is ever allowed to be ordinary. Perhaps he eventually falls in love. Perhaps he has a child and confronts the fear that Roger's history could repeat through him. The government that hunted Roger's bloodline is gone or transformed, but Ace's trauma remains. He might worry that being his child would be a burden. His family reminds him of the answer he already learned. A child does not need to earn the right to exist. Even if Ace never has children, he becomes for younger pirates what Whitebeard was for him, proof that family can be chosen. The difference is that Ace tries not to make the family depend entirely on his strength. Captains are trained, routes are shared, islands can call one another for help. If Ace disappears, the whole structure does not collapse. That may be his greatest improvement upon Whitebeard's legacy. Whitebeard wanted a family, and he built one around his enormous presence. Ace wants that family to survive the absence of any single father. Looking back across this alternate history, Ace's survival changes some characters through his presence and others through what no longer happens. Luffy is the clearest example. He does not lose Ace, so he avoids the deepest grief of his life. That may make him emotionally lighter after Marineford, yet he still experiences defeat. He still learns that his crew would die if he brought them into the new world unprepared. He still trains with Rayleigh, masters Haki, challenges emperors, awakens his fruit, and reaches the end of the sea. The difference is not that Luffy becomes weak. It is that his strength develops beside a living older brother rather than in the hole left by a dead one. Canon Luffy carries Ace's will through memory. This Luffy can argue with Ace, ignore his advice, ask for help, and eventually become stronger than him. That last change matters to Ace as much as it matters to Luffy. Older brothers often imagine protection as a permanent hierarchy. Ace has to accept that Luffy no longer needs him to stand in front of every danger. At Wano, Ace sees Luffy defeat the enemy Ace once promised to challenge. In the war against Blackbeard, Ace trusts Luffy with the final clash. Against Emu, both contribute without Ace taking the prophesied role. Their relationship matures from protection into partnership. Sabo's path changes more dramatically. Without Ace's death, his memories probably return later. He never eats the flame fruit because it never re-enters circulation. This removes one of his most recognizable abilities and may make his missions harder. Fire allowed Canon Sabo to cross battlefields, destroy structures, and become a visual symbol of revolution. But Sabo was already the Revolutionary Army's chief of staff before acquiring the fruit. His strength, leadership, and politics do not come from Ace's power. Remaining without a devil fruit emphasizes that his identity was never meant to be a replacement for his brother. In canon, inheriting Ace's flame is beautiful, but it also places Sabo inside a legacy created by loss. Here, Sabo can recover his brothers without becoming either of them. His dragon claw technique remains his own. His public symbol grows from his actions at the reverie rather than from the fruit he carries. The delayed reunion also gives Sabo a wound distinct from Ace's. Ace feels guilty that others died to save him. Sabo feels guilty that he lived nearby for years without remembering the people who loved him. Neither guilt is rational in a simple sense. Ace did not choose the execution. Sabo did not choose amnesia. Both still have to learn that suffering is not repaired by punishing themselves. Marco changes because Ace shares the burden after Whitebeard's death. In canon, Marco leads the remnants into defeat, withdraws to Whitebeard's village, and becomes a guardian of memory. With Ace alive, Marco does not have to be the only visible survivor at the center of that failure. He can teach Ace without becoming his permanent captain. He can protect the village while Ace travels. At Wano, the brothers reunite not merely to avenge Odin, but to help a living rebellion. In the final war, Marco's power is used for the purpose best suited to it, keeping people alive through a transformation of the age. Jinbe's relationship with Ace also continues. Jinbe fought Ace for 5 days before Whitebeard made Fishman Island safe. He later protected Luffy partly because Ace asked him to look after his brother. At Marineford in this timeline, Jinbe helps save both. Afterward, he becomes one of the few people who can challenge Ace without being impressed by Roger's name. Jinbe knows what Whitebeard's protection meant to an island and what its limits were. His counsel helps Ace turn a scattered pirate legacy into an evacuation network. When Jinbe formally joins Luffy, Ace understands that his friend has not abandoned one brother for another. He has chosen his own captain. Tama and Yamato change because Ace's promises are no longer inherited entirely by Luffy. In canon, Ace's absence gives both relationships a tragic shape. Luffy reaches the people his brother left behind, and their hope moves through him. Here, Ace must return personally. A living promise can be questioned. Tama can ask why he was late. Yamato can decide whether the person remembered from one night still understands the dream they shared. Ace cannot remain perfect in memory. He has to apologize, listen, and keep his word under conditions he never anticipated. That makes the promises less tragic and more demanding. Blackbeard loses one of the foundations of his rise. He still acquires Whitebeard's power and still becomes an emperor, but he does not get to point to Ace's corpse as the final proof of his plan. The man he defeated survives, learns, and becomes harder to manipulate. Teach would hate that. Blackbeard's strategy depends on people remaining what he believes them to be. Whitebeard is old and unwilling to abandon family, so Teach uses the war. Ace is proud and unable to ignore a challenge, so Teach defeats him. The government is hungry for Roger's blood, so Teach trades Ace for a warlord position. Impel Down contains powerful criminals, so Teach uses the title to enter. Ace's growth introduces something Teach cannot calculate easily. A person can recognize his own pattern and choose differently. At the Payback War, Ace retreats with survivors. At Hachinasu, he rescues Garp instead of dueling. In the final battle, he trusts Luffy. Teach may believe dreams never die, but he underestimates how people change while pursuing them. Akinu faces the same failure from another direction. He believes ancestry and affiliation reveal character. Roger's son will become a great evil. Dragon's son must be killed before he grows. Anyone who deserts his post is an enemy. Any pirate who protects civilians is merely disguising criminal ambition. Ace's life contradicts that certainty. He remains a pirate and a dangerous man. He also saves people the government abandons. Akinu cannot fit him into a moral system that allows only absolute categories. This does not make Ace harmless. He has burned ships, fought Marines, and helped overthrow governments. A serious alternate story should not turn him into a saint. The point is that actions must be judged as actions. Blood does not decide them in advance. The world government's attempt to execute Ace was designed to make blood destiny. His survival makes choice visible. Even Whitebeard's death changes meaning. In canon, Whitebeard fails to bring Ace home alive but succeeds in giving his sons a final path and reigniting the pirate age. Here, he achieves the rescue. That might seem like a more complete victory, yet the cost remains severe. Whitebeard dies. His crew loses the Payback War. His territories scatter. The rescue does not preserve the old world. It allows one son to carry something valuable into the new one. This is why Whitebeard should still die at Marineford in the most convincing version of the scenario. If Ace survives and Whitebeard escapes too, the balance of the world barely breaks. Blackbeard may fail to obtain the Tremor fruit. The new age loses its central power vacuum. The story becomes a much wider alternate universe based on several miracles rather than the consequence of one changed choice. Ace surviving alone is more painful and more useful. He receives the life everyone purchased, but not the comfort of returning to the same family structure. He must decide what that life is for. The answer is never one grand destiny. Ace lives for Luffy, but not only for Luffy. He lives for Sabo, but does not join the revolutionaries. He lives for Whitebeard's family, but does not rebuild Whitebeard's empire. He lives for Tama and Yamato, but does not control their futures. He lives for himself, even when he is still learning what that means. That last part is the most difficult. Ace knows how to sacrifice. He learned it as a child fighting Blue Gem, as a captain protecting his crew, and as a commander pursuing Teach. Sacrifice gives him a moment in which the value of his life seems easy to measure. If he dies and someone he loves survives, the equation feels complete. Living has no such clean equation. Living means some people die despite his efforts. It means he makes mistakes after receiving a second chance. It means he sometimes enjoys food or sunlight on a day when Whitebeard cannot. It means he grows older than the age Roger reached certain milestones and realizes there is no script inside his blood telling him what comes next. Survivor's guilt tells Ace that happiness is theft. Whitebeard's final order tells him it is an obligation. Over time, Ace learns that neither description is quite right. Happiness is simply part of the life everyone wanted him to have. He does not honor the dead by refusing it. Years later, a new generation hears the story of Marineford. The details have already become legend. Some versions say Ace walked through an ocean of magma. Some claim Whitebeard threw him all the way to Law's submarine. Others insist Shanks fought the three admirals alone while Ace carried Luffy beneath one arm. The truth is smaller. Akinu insulted Whitebeard. Ace became angry. And then he kept moving. That choice is difficult to turn into a heroic statue. It has no giant punch and no final speech. It looks like retreat, but it becomes the hinge of an age. Because Ace escapes, Luffy wakes beside his brother rather than inside total loss. Because Ace lives, Sabo can recover two brothers instead of inheriting one brother's grave. Because Ace lives, Whitebeard's scattered family has someone restless enough to connect it and humbled enough not to claim it. Because Ace lives, Tama hears an apology, Yamato receives a choice, and Blackbeard faces an enemy who no longer answers every provocation. Because Ace lives, the government's greatest public execution becomes a public failure. And because he continues choosing life, that failure grows. Other ripples spread around the edges of the story. Buggy still becomes famous at Marineford. His accidental broadcast still places him in front of the world, and the revelation that he sailed with Roger still attracts followers. Ace escaping may even make Buggy look more important, because confused viewers assume the former Roger pirate helped rescue his captain's son. Buggy will deny this whenever danger is near and accept credit whenever money is involved. That means his rise toward warlord status and eventually cross-guild can still occur. The age remains absurd enough for Roger's terrified former apprentice to become an emperor, while Roger's actual son rejects the title. Law's position changes too. Saving Luffy at Marineford already creates an unusual bond. Saving both brothers makes Law responsible for preserving two of the government's most wanted bloodlines. Ace does not forget debts easily. When Law later forms an alliance with Luffy, he discovers that helping one reckless brother has given him access to another. Ace cannot save Law from every consequence. Law still confronts Doflamingo, still carries Corazon's memory, and still chooses to challenge Kaido. But Ace's intelligence network can help after Wano, especially when Blackbeard attacks the Heart Pirates. In canon, Bepo rescues Law from the sea while the crew is defeated. Here, an Ace ally monitoring Blackbeard's movements may recover additional survivors. The Heart Pirates could remain scattered rather than presumed lost. Kid is less likely to accept help. Ace respects that and sends it anyway when information becomes available. Not every rescue succeeds. Shank's destruction of Kid's crew near Elbaf may still happen because Kid's decisions are his own. Ace's survival cannot become a device that removes all consequences from the new generation. The same is true for Shanks. Ace owes him gratitude, but that does not place the Red Hair Pirates on Ace's side in every final conflict. Shanks has his own history with Roger, the Five Elders, Blackbeard, and Luffy. If Shanks and Luffy must compete for the One Piece, Ace refuses to intervene merely because he knows both. His habit of taking responsibility for everyone finally has a boundary. Other people are allowed to choose their own battles. Boa Hancock's role remains connected to Luffy rather than Ace. She helps hide both brothers after Marineford, but her feelings do not transfer just because Ace is present. Ace would quickly realize that Hancock's patience with him exists entirely because he is related to Luffy. He finds this entertaining until she threatens to petrify him for consuming food Luffy might want. The Kuja also become early allies in the later evacuation network. An island protected by the Calm Belt understands the value of independent defenses, and Hancock has no reason to trust government promises after the warlord system ends. The abolition of that system still happens. Fujitora's campaign is driven by the suffering caused by Doflamingo and Crocodile, not by Ace's death. The Seraphim still replace the warlords as government weapons. Ace's first encounter with a child-shaped weapon carrying Lunarian traits would remind him of King and of the government's willingness to manufacture lineage for combat while condemning natural lineage as criminal. If Ace meets a Seraphim modeled after a person he knew, he refuses to treat the child as morally responsible for the original. That response follows directly from his life. A body, a face, or inherited power does not predetermine choice. Bonnie understands that better than most. Her connection to Kuma and the pacifistas gives Ace another relationship shaped by the government's attack on family. Ace may initially see Jewelry Bonnie as another volatile pirate. After Egghead, he sees a daughter carrying the truth of what was done to her father. Their alliance would be loud, impatient, and unusually hungry. The Revolutionary Army benefits from Ace's roots, but also fears the cult of personality growing around him. Dragon knows that revolutions built around a heroic bloodline can reproduce monarchy under a new name. Ace agrees. He has no desire to become the good king who replaces the bad king. That agreement creates an unexpected respect between Ace and Dragon. Both are fathers or sons separated by a world-changing name. Dragon left Luffy in Garp's care while pursuing revolution. Ace may question that choice sharply. Dragon may answer that he believed distance protected Luffy from his enemies. Ace knows exactly how incomplete that reasoning is. The government targeted Luffy anyway. Their conversation does not resolve Dragon's absence, but it gives Ace another warning about sacrifice. Devoting yourself to the world can become a way of avoiding the people directly in front of you. Ace's rescue network must never become an excuse to disappear from his crew, his brothers, or the people to whom he made personal promises. Even the Marines' public history changes. Marineford can no longer be commemorated simply as the day Justice defeated Whitebeard and Roger's son. Veterans know the target escaped. Younger recruits hear competing accounts of why the war continued after Ace was free and why Shanks had to stop it. Kobe's protest becomes more significant because the sacrifice of soldiers cannot be justified by claiming the execution succeeded. Akinu responds by tightening the institution, but suppression gives the questions more power. By the time Vegapunk exposes the danger facing the world, many Marines are already prepared to doubt an official story. That doubt helps the final split happen. Ace does not create moral Marines, but his escape leaves a crack inside their founding triumph. Years later, truth enters through it. The greatest change, however, is not institutional. It is the number of conversations that can occur only because Ace is present. He can tell Robin what Roger's name felt like from the inside while she explains how history turns people into symbols. He can thank Chopper for treating the injuries left by the final war. He can argue with Zoro about whether protecting Luffy means interfering or trusting. He can eat Sanji's food and learn that criticism of the cook is more dangerous than an admiral. He can hear Brook play a song for Whitebeard's dead and understand that remembrance does not have to be silent. He can meet the crew Luffy crossed Marineford to regain. For the Straw Hats, Ace is not only a tragic story their captain rarely discusses. He is an embarrassing older brother who arrives unannounced, tells childhood stories Luffy once suppressed, and quietly checks whether each crewmate is strong enough to protect him. Nami charges Ace for fire damage. Usopp pretends to have commanded 10,000 men at Marineford. Frankie wants to redesign Ace's ship. Robin sees through every attempt Ace makes to hide concern behind teasing. They become family through ordinary time rather than shared mourning. That may be the rarest gift his survival creates. Great wars provide dramatic proof of love, but daily life is where love becomes real. Ace gets to experience the part after everyone says they would die for him. He has to accept invitations, remember birthdays, repair damaged decks, and return when he says he will. The people who saved him did not fight for a symbol frozen at 20 years old. They fought for all the unremarkable days he had not lived yet. The final image of Ace's story should not be a throne, a grave, or a monument. It should be a ship leaving an island after the people there no longer need his protection. The sail carries the mark of fire and the small crescent of Whitebeard's memory. Yamato may be laughing on deck. Tama may be training nearby. Older members of the crew argue over the route. Ace is asleep with his face in a plate of food. A newspaper lies open beside him. The headline calls him Roger's heir again. Someone has drawn a line through the words. Far away, Luffy is having an adventure of his own. Sabo is helping another country choose its future. Garp is terrorizing young Marines with training methods no new government has successfully banned. Marco is tending a quiet village. Daden keeps Ace's latest wanted poster while loudly denying that she is proud. No one is gathered for a funeral. Ace wakes when the lookout calls that another ship is approaching. It might be an enemy. It might be a friend. It might be someone asking for help. He puts on his hat, walks to the bow, and faces whatever comes next. For most of his childhood, Ace asked whether the world wanted him alive. At Marineford, his family gave its answer. The rest of his journey is learning to give his own. Yes,